Welcome back to the podcast, folks. This week the podcast is brought to you by Innov. Innov is one of the number one motorcycle dash cam companies out there. I have their K2. I've done an installation vid on the system and I've got a full review coming out this Friday over on the channel. Innov don't really have any sort of sponsor readout as such, but all I can say is it's a fantastic bit of kit. We're all aware of the 3 or 4 accidents I had commuting in and out of London a couple of years ago. It was just a nightmare few years. Seemed to have dink after dink after dink, and I wish I'd had the Innov fitted at that time. Because despite having a helmet camera on my camera almost all the time, I don't always hit record. The beauty of the Innov system is the second you turn the ignition on, it starts recording and you are covered the entire time you're on your bike. Head on over to innov.co.uk. That's INNOVV.co.uk. Use the link in the description down below and check them out for yourselves. Okay, on to this week's episode. Brew Time number 37, and this week we're talking to Steph Jeavons. Enjoy. Are you all right just to crack on, or do you want to have a little chit chat first, or?
I'm all right to crack on, yeah. That's what we're going to be doing, isn't it? Having a chit-chat.
Absolutely, absolutely. Right, well, we'll crack straight on then. Folks, brew time, Steph Jeavons. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. How are you?
All good, thanks. All good. Living the dream, as they say. Living the dream. Now, this is a weird one, this, because we've known each other for quite a while, but we've never actually really sat and had a chat, have we?
No, well, no, not really. We've had the odd standing chat,
That's
haven't
right.
we? And I did interrupt one of your presentations once, I think. But other than that, no, we haven't had a deep conversation.
No. So I think this is going to be a good one. I'm looking forward to this. There's been loads of questions posed by everyone across social media and over on Patreon and everything like that. So I think we're going to have a busy evening.
Excellent, and I can hear you properly now. I think there was a loose wire there somewhere, so we're all good.
So Houston, we're all in. I've got to say, I'm impressed.
Yeah.
I'm impressed with this little sound booth you've got going on. Is this for your audiobook?
It's for my audiobook, yeah, which is actually a lot harder to get myself motivated for than I thought. It's quite hard work doing an audiobook. It's harder than writing the book, I think.
Is it?
Well, I don't know. You know, the thing that you're doing is usually the hardest thing, isn't it?
Yeah. There's a few people have said to me about doing an audiobook, but I kind of don't know where to start, and I don't know.
Well,
I don't know how I could do it.
You've actually probably got a really good voice for it. I find, and the problem is when you start recording an audiobook is that you kind of sound, because you don't normally read out loud, do you?
No.
And I certainly started sounding like I was reading to a child, you know, like one day in a land far, far away. And I was like, no, don't do that. What are you doing? You know, you got to try and find your voice again, which is quite bizarre. But yeah.
So how far through it are you?
Oh God, I'm like up to chapter 6, and the amount of editing required, because it starts off with me, you know, it's very, like I said, it's very difficult to read out loud. So you start going through it like one day in a land far, and then you trip over a word, then you just go, oh, I mean, I have to swear on this podcast.
Of course you can. Say what you like.
Oh, okay, great. So you just hear me going, fuck, and then I start again and try and sound really cool and casual. But so there's going to be a lot of editing involved, probably twice as much as the reading, 3 times maybe. So
Blimey. Are you doing that all yourself, or are you sort of contracting out to somebody, or?
No, I'm doing it all myself. That's
awesome.
The way I kind of always end up doing it.
Yeah.
You know, I back myself into a corner going, it'd be better if I do it myself. I'll learn, you know. Are
you a bit of a control freak? Because I know I am. I definitely am.
Yeah. I guess I am. I'm not an easy person to manage. That's for sure. So, you know, I don't take to people telling me how to do things very well. Even if I do, you know, I'm not necessarily the best person to do things, but I just like to do it in my own time and in my own way. So
I'm exactly the same. I find that I put things off literally till it's the last minute, and then I think I work better under pressure. When I know it's got to be done, then it's just, you know, everything to the wall, let's go for it, and I'll get it done. But I procrastinate something stupid, I really do.
But that's like me actually as well. I find that you know, and it's like I was saying to somebody about this the other day. I had to record a presentation for someone it was for a business networking group that are doing an online conference, and they asked me to do a presentation, and they asked me to pre-record it. And I was saying,
wow,
this is going to be really difficult because I haven't got the pressure of a live audience.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm going to be like, oh, no, do that again. Oh, no, do that again. Actually, it didn't work out too bad, but because I tried to sort of pretend there was somebody listening on the other side.
Yeah.
But that pressure gives you that edge, I think, to do things well. But yeah,
definitely. And you can feed when you're giving these presentations and talks, you feed off the crowd as well, don't you? You know, it's like you can kind of get an idea as to what are people actually interested in this crowd. What do they want to hear more about?
Yeah, and the dangerous thing, of course, as well, is that you're laughing at yourself, you know, because there's nobody laughing with you. So you just go ha 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 at the end of your own joke, and you're like, oh no, that sounds terrible. I can't.
I'm used to laughing all by myself at myself.
It's all on your own.
I tell you what, we're missing something here.
What are we missing? Oh,
do you have a refreshment?
I have a gin and tonic, of course. I've always got a gin and tonic in my hand.
Good call. Well, I'm out of Brewdog, so I am on the Peronis now. So,
You're a Brewdog guy, are you?
Well, we had a whole load of Brewdog left over from a barbecue. We did a big social barbecue, 2 years ago now. So there was a load of Brewdog left over, and I just started drinking that when I started the podcast, and people saw me drinking Brewdog. So folk were sending Amazon packages of, like, random people, well, not random, friends that I know through Teapot, were sending me crates of Brewdog. And it was like, oh my God. Yeah, it was incredible. Thank you very much.
Oh, well, it worked for me. This is gin and tonic. Yeah. I'm on the wrong camera. Gin and tonic.
You might regret saying that. On the other hand, you might not.
I doubt it. Cheers.
Right then. Well, Steph, I don't know if you've watched too many of these, but the way I normally do it is sort of introduce the person and then throw the floor open to you, just for you to tell us a little bit about yourself. What's your name? Where'd you come from? What have you done? Don't be one of the normal round the world adventure mega hero type people that we have on here that just go, oh well, I'm 42, I come from here, and I went round the world, and that's it. You know what I mean? Everyone plays it down so much. So
no pressure.
What have you done?
Okay, so now go right. Okay, so my name's Steph Jeavons, and I am how old am I? Not telling you. 45. And I have done a fair bit in the adventure scene. I guess I've done a fair bit. I used to run an off-road school. I did quite a few tours that way, and probably the thing that I'm most known for is riding around the world and riding on all 7 continents. Now
that is a claim to fame. If you don't know, folks,
not bad, is it?
You were the first person to solo ride around the world on all 7 continents, aren't you?
Yeah, the first to circumnavigate the globe and in one go, basically, and hit all 7 continents. Yeah.
Now we'll get into that, because some people might not appreciate how rare that is to do all 7, because Antarctica is basically, it's that mythical 7th continent, isn't it? Which most people can't get anywhere near. How did you do that?
No, that's true, and that, and probably thankfully, really. But and you know what, the part of me kind of regrets it in a way, because so many people keep asking me how they can do it as well, and I keep thinking, and of course you want to help, and I do offer whatever help I can, because that's what we do as overlanders, or whatever you call us, and we share and we help out, and we give advice, and we save people time with the information we've learned along the way. Yep. But so many people have asked me, God, if all these people make it, that's actually not such a good thing, I
know.
But how I did it, but actually the truth is that it's not that easy to do. You can't just jump on a cruise ship with your motorbike and get dropped off there. The way I did it, I mean, it took me over a year to find someone to agree to take me. Certainly the cruise ships wouldn't allow a motorbike on board. The only way I could do it was with a small sailing yacht from Australia. As in, the people were from Australia. We left from Ushuaia, and they agreed to take me for fun. They were looking for a kind of a new adventure and thought a motorbike would be fun. And it was all kind of done slightly under the radar, and that's really the only way that I could do it. And ride on it. I know somebody's got there before me with a motorbike and couldn't ride because they'd done it on a cruise ship. They had, and this was several years ago, had done it on a cruise ship, and they'd allowed her to kind of take the bike there but not do anything with it.
Okay.
You know.
Yeah.
So this was quite special to actually get on the shores and land, and we chose a very quiet place with, as little wildlife as we could, and just rode up and down a bit. It's not like I rode around the whole continent or anything, but
wow.
But yeah, and then did it again a second time when a load of Ukrainian scientists found out we were there and went, "Oh my God, you've got a motorbike! Come ashore! We've got like a crane. We'll help you. Come and get drunk with us, and then we'll ride around on your bike a bit." And it was.
But you don't drink, Steph. You don't drink.
No. I'm well known for being teetotal. Yeah.
That's mega. So how long were you actually there for then? Like boots on the ground?
Okay. Well, it was a 3-week trip altogether, and we basically sailed around the peninsula and then only landed twice. Landed the bike twice, but we landed on lots of separate occasions.
Yeah.
Probably the longest we were ashore was at the Ukrainian science base, getting drunk until 3 a.m. So, but it was really cool because the one thing, I mean, there are cruise ships. They allow so many cruise ships there every year or whatever, it's 500 people or whatever, and then it's very structured, very organized. They have to kind of go in a line and be practically tied together, and they're go in set areas. On a sailing boat, of course, you're turning up there, you're sailing there, so there's no environmental damage. A lot of people have sort of made that comment, about being a bit protective now. It's like, oh, motorbike, environmental, and it's like, well, cruise ships go there, and we sailed there, and we really just rode up and down a little bit, left no trace whatsoever. Yeah. But that was the beauty, was sailing around so quietly that the wildlife couldn't hear us coming, and not that they're scared anyway, because they have nothing to be scared of in humans over there anymore, and just being able to land where we wanted and just go and explore. It's such a stunningly beautiful place. It's the most beautiful desert I've ever seen, I think, for sure.
Wow. And what was it like then? Was it your stereotypical white that you imagine it to be, or was it, what's the weather like? What's the terrain like? Is it snow and ice?
The weather was so extreme. So it was beautiful, and it changed ridiculously quickly. So you would you'd kind of like sail around a bit, and you'd have this beautiful sunshine, and it was like you on your favorite skiing holiday or something, and you got your shades on and your down jacket and your shades, and you're good to go. And then suddenly the weather just, the wind whips up, and it becomes like, whoa, batten down the hatches, literally. And it was terrifying at times. She took no prisoners. Yeah. But it was stunningly beautiful. It was better than I had ever imagined. Like, I went kayaking one morning, hungover, and thought best cure for a hangover is to go kayaking in Antarctica. Yeah. And so I got in this. And there was whales, in the distance, and we got close to some icebergs, and it was sort of shimmering in the sunlight, and it had this sort of very bluey, dreamlike quality. It was like not of this earth. I just remember sitting there going, exactly, wow, I just couldn't have imagined it this beautiful, So yeah, very cool place.
I'm
sure. No pun intended.
I'm sure there will be a question that asks this, but do you think that's probably your most favourite part of the trip, or favourite place?
That moment when I landed and then rode the bike a bit and then wandered off on my own away from the rest of the crew and just sat on a rock, and I described this in my book, plug, and and just that one real moment of going, wow, because I dreamt about it for so long, and so many people had said, you won't be able to do it, yada yada yada, and the effort required to get to that point, not just by me but by so many people who helped me, that moment of just sitting on the rock and having a 5 minutes, 10 minutes to myself was just, and I cried. I was just like, oh my God, I'm so happy.
That's mega. I mean,
and it was such a high. It really was.
You really have joined a very, very select crew of people. There's not that many people, full stop, is there, who have, never mind with a bike, but there's not that many people who've actually set foot in Antarctica. That's a fairly amazing achievement. Well done.
Thank you. Yeah, well worth it. It's beautiful.
Right, so we'll go back to the actual trip itself. You left in 2012, didn't you? Same year as me. Is that right?
No, 2014.
Oh, I thought it was 12 you went. Ah, right, okay.
You got me thinking about it now. No, it was definitely 2014. Yeah.
Right. So it wasn't you. I was told when I was in Mauritania and it all went a bit wrong, I was told that I thought it was you. I was told there was a British woman who was about 3 or 4 weeks behind, who was coming the same direction as me. I assumed it was you.
Oh, I
wonder who that was.
I wonder who that was.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
I've always thought it was you.
Answers on a postcard.
Yeah, if it was you, drop me a line. All right, so 2014. Right, so.
Yeah.
What brought it about? What made you do it?
What made me do it? Okay, well, I've got so many different answers for this. Usually they're all sort of bullshit, jokey answers. But I mean, it was just the everything aligned at that time. For the timing wise, I just closed down my business after my business partner had sort of kind of done the dirty on me, and then so I had to make a decision quickly. It was either try and build up the business again on my own, or go off and do my dream trip, which is what I'd been sort of planning quietly in the corner, and hoping that in 3 years' time I was going to go off on this trip. And I thought, I either commit to this new business plan for 5 years, or I just go for it and hit the road and I sell everything and I just go for it. And so obviously I just went for it. The motivation behind it, anyone who's read the book knows what the real motivation was. And that came from a seed, I suppose, that was planted 25 years previously, when I was in my prison cell, having gotten myself into a right old pickle at the age of 20, got myself addicted to drugs, got myself into prison, and I did. I say I got myself because I did get myself. There was no one else to blame. Circumstances. Shit happens, and shit happened quite frequently in my case in those days. So I can't imagine why, but yeah, I found myself in prison, and I describe it in the book, and it sounds like I've made it up, but it really is true that I had this kind of epiphany moment where I was in my prison cell. I'm looking out of the cell window, and I see this. When you're just sort of daydreaming and you start imagining, and it's almost like you are dreaming. You just sort of, your mind wanders. And I was looking at this tree, and I imagined it as a baobab tree, and I thought, one day I'm gonna travel the world, and I'm gonna make the most of my life, and I'm gonna stop fucking around.
Yeah.
And I'm going to get free from drugs, free from the prison, free from, helps to get free from prison if you're going to start, plan on traveling the world. And
it does help, yeah.
and that was it. Now, I didn't imagine by motorbike at that point, even though I was already sort of into bikes then. But yeah, I that was my plan. And when I got out of prison, I sorted myself out. I, started studying. Well, I started studying inside, and then I got my shit together, shall we say, and set up my own business eventually, and owned a couple of houses, had a normal life, and did a lot of travel, but that sort of itch was still there to do something big and to proper travel the world,
Yep.
And so, it took a while, but I got there in the end.
See, I'm always interested in this because, my whole thing around Teapot is the words that were said to me by my mum before she passed away. Live your life, That was the catalyst that sort of spurred me on to do this dream trip that I'd always thought about, but I've got this to do, I can't do it because of that. You always put barriers in front of yourself, don't you? And eventually you just get to that point where it's like, fuck it, I'm going for it. I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And I'm always interested to know what that point is when somebody just goes, right, we're going for it. Because it's like a switch. In me, it was like a switch. It went off in my head, and I was like, in my head, I was just, nothing's going to stop me from achieving this now. Let's go.
Yeah. Well, to be honest, and I think, I wasn't really sure I ever believed I was capable of doing what I did. And so it was really just a bit of a dream, and wasn't really sure it was ever going to happen. And I've got to say, I was just saying earlier about my business partner doing the dirty on me and stuff. He actually, I have a lot to thank him for as well, because meeting him in a random, in a chance meeting a few years previously, he taught me a lot about. There was two sides to him, and one of the good side of him was a pretty cool guy. And he is a pretty cool guy. Let's not go into the downsides of how our business relationship ended. But the one thing he taught me was that together we made an awesome team for quite a long time, and the reason being was that he pulled me along where sometimes I'd play it too safe. And, I had a lot of good ideas, but I'm like, I don't know. And those barriers would come down, as that you were just talking about. And he would just go, fuck the barriers, let's go for it. And I'd be like, well, go on then. Okay, let's go for it. And I got carried along with his energy and enthusiasm. And that actually took me a long way. Where sometimes I'd have to pull him back and go, whoa there, steady on. But that gave me a lot of self-belief, and the fact that he helped me get to the top of those sand dunes in Morocco, for example, on the motorbike, or the fact that we set up a successful business together, or the fact that, we achieved a lot that I thought was beyond me, so that gave me a lot. And I did a lot more riding, of course, with setting up an off-road school meant that I did a lot more riding. And so I suddenly thought, well, do you know what? And he's a bit of a he's achieved a lot in his life as well. And I also, through the off-road school, met a lot of people like John McGuinness, for example, what's his name? Carl Fogarty, who I don't particularly get on with. There's a story there, but but those kind of people, like Ron Haslam, those are cool people, really nice, mostly really nice people, 2/3 are really nice people. And
oh, there's some stories there, Steph. There are some stories there.
And oh dear. And I'm only halfway through my gin. Wait till I got to the end. And but the point is, these guys are really cool, and they've achieved something great. And when you get to meet them, you go, oh, these are just normal people. Yep. These are just guys who have gone for it. Yep. And it gave me that belief in a way that, do you know what, just go for it. That's the only difference between, well, that and talent, I suppose. But but in a lot of cases, that's the only thing stopping most of us, is that self-belief and that unwillingness to take that final leap, Yeah,
absolutely. Totally agree.
Into the unknown, I guess. And so I just took the leap. Yeah,
good on you. I get a lot of people saying about my choice of bike, I would like to do a trip like yours, but I want to do it on this bike and I can't afford that. I have this bike at the moment and I want to do this. And I sort of turn around to people and I say, look, just like what Jacques Lucassen said to me, take the bike that makes you smile. Just whatever bike makes you smile, take it. Because any bike will do that trip, but not any rider will do it. And the rider is the point that's going to fail. And it's just there, isn't it?
So what was your big thing? What made, because that was a really long story. Sorry about that. But what was what was it that made you take that leap in the end? Yeah.
I never used to ride bikes. I'd always wanted to, but never done it. My parents were against bikes, even though my dad was a biker in his youth. But bikes are dangerous, so you're not riding a bike, and that was that. And that continued into adult life, really. I just always thought, I fancy a bike, but I've got other things to spend my money on and blah, 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 blah. I saw Long Way Round back in 2004, whenever it came out, and I always thought, God, that's cool. I would love to do it. But again, I didn't ride a bike. I don't have the money. I can't possibly take a year or two out of my life to go off and do a trip. Yeah. Joined the old bill. Then my mum got ill with cancer. She fought that for 10 years. And then it started getting the better of her right at the end. And we were sat in my living room watching the TV on the couch, and Long Way Round came on, one of the satellite TV channels. And again, I started moaning. And she just turned around and she said, look, you've always spoke about doing this trip. You've always spoke about riding a bike. Don't get to my stage where you're near the end and you regret what you've not done in life. We only get one chance, so look after those that you love, but live your life. And, you talked about like an epiphany. Well, that was literally just a bolt went off in my head and I was like, you're right, I'm going to do it. So I booked my direct access there and then on the computer. By the time I did my direct access, Mum was really bad. She was in her last couple of weeks of life, so she elected to go to a local hospice. She didn't want to die in my flat, bless her, so she went to a local hospice. I passed my bike test, picked up my brand new GSX-R 600 that I'd bought. So I picked that up, rode it to the hospice in my Power Ranger outfit, wandered into her ward, shook the keys and said, I've done it, I've passed my test. So she gave me a big hug and then she said, promise me you'll do your trip. And she died 6 days later. And,
wow.
And that was it. It was like, right.
So you had no choice after that, did you?
I'm going, yeah. So that was it.
Are you going?
It was. It took me just over 4 years, and then I was ready to go. Yeah.
But isn't it interesting though how it's from. I'm sure there's some really clever quote that will put it far better than me, but it's from hardship grows the seed of something else, something beautiful, and from that hardship comes a strength and that sees you through in a way.
Yeah, I think you almost need to experience these horrible lows in life to realise how strong you are, and then that strength gives you confidence, doesn't it? To basically think, right, let's go for it, let's do it.
Well, yeah, and to know that you can handle it, that you're getting through this and you are actually a lot stronger than you thought you were. And
definitely.
So
did you feel like that after your trip, when you got back after your trip? Did you just think, right, fuck it, I can take on anything now, bring it, let's do it?
Yeah, I did, and I did start planning all sorts of weird, wonderful things. I had like a list of things that I was like, "Oh, what am I going to do now?" But I tell you, after that happened more after Antarctica, to be honest, where I suddenly felt like I'm on top of the world. I can achieve anything if I put my mind to it. Yep. It really did feel like that. That was the ultimate high for me. But then shortly afterwards, I had a big downer where I was just like, oh my God, what now? What if life never feels this good again,
Oh, right, yeah.
So it was a bit of a weird one, like the downer after the big high, really. So, yeah.
Did you experience the blues when you got back from the trip? I did.
Yeah.
I did, massively.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think probably the more people you speak to have done big things like this, whether it be motorbikes or endurance running or anything like that. I'm fiddling with my wires here because you kind of quiet on me again. You realize this is a thing. It is almost like it's like a post-trip blues or whatever.
Yeah.
And you've been, and of course, you've been planning for so long. Yeah. You've had this focus, this goal to work towards, and you know exactly. You're so focused. You know exactly what you want and what you're doing and where you're going. It's kind of, but and then you get there and it's like, shit, what now?
Absolutely.
And you don't really see beyond that focus, do you? If you're that driven by something, you don't really see beyond that. Mm-hmm. And so you get home, and actually I had this thing of, I got home and I was like, yeah, I feel like a rock star, because I got invited to all these events and people were giving me free beer and there was lots of rock music on, and I got to dance like crazy and do all the stuff that I love, and got to meet up with people and be dead sociable, and I was invited to come and be dead sociable. And then and I thought, wow, what's everybody on about? Because people kept saying, oh, you're going to be on a downer. Yeah. And I'm like, no, I'm not, shut up. And then then I just woke up in tears one morning going, what the hell am I doing with my life? What is it I want? And that's when I started writing lists and trying to come up with what it was I wanted, and I'm still trying to figure that out again now, to be honest, but I've learned to deal with it, I think.
Yeah, I had that for probably a good year, I think, where I was just lost. I was just like, what was the point in all that, and what next?
Yeah.
Like, what am I supposed to do now then? And I don't know, it was YouTube. It was basically YouTube that got me out of it, because I think I missed the social interaction that I had on my trip, where you're meeting new people all the time. physically you're meeting new people, but then I had an okay sort of at the time I had an okay Facebook following. So I had loads of sort of social interaction through that, which was amazing. And then all of a sudden, once the trip's done, I stopped posting anything because I was like, well, the trip's done, so that's TeapotOne finished, and I really missed it. So I started doing the vids again towards the end of 2016, and I got that back. I got that interaction with people back online.
Yeah,
and it's just gone from there, really.
But didn't you find initially, because when I first got back, I stopped enjoying anything that gave me pleasure on the trip, weirdly. So I didn't want to ride my motorbike. I didn't want to take photographs, which I was doing every day and loving. Didn't want to do any editing. I didn't want to do any, I don't know, I suddenly had this, well, I suppose that's what kind of depression or blues or whatever it was, that's what it does. You stop enjoying the things that normally give you pleasure. And I suppose I definitely suffered from that. I just put everything away, and when that hit, I just put everything away and was not interested. But I think the other thing that I found was bizarre was that, and that I missed, was that, as you're traveling through places, you don't really feel, how can I put this? You don't really feel like the rules of life or whatever kind of they're not for you. You're just traveling through, and then everywhere you go, you're just traveling through, and it's just such a light feeling. There's no,
you don't have any of the worries that you have in normal life.
There's no worries, and then people say to you, "I don't know how you do what you do," and you're like, "Seriously? I don't know how you stay still." It becomes such a way of life and such a normal thing, and to wake up in the morning out of your tent, and the only time frame you've got is when the dew dries from your tent and you can pack it up again, and until then you make your coffee and you sit and watch the sunrise, and then to be home, I was absolutely petrified of putting roots down. It's like, oh no, I can't do that, because I didn't even want to get a contract phone, because that would imply roots. That would be like a commitment, I wanted to keep that sense of freedom and feeling like I could just pick up my bag and leave whenever I wanted.
Absolutely.
So
interesting.
It ruins us. It actually ruins us, doesn't it?
I think you can let it. You can definitely let it. There's plenty of people that you speak to who, on the outside, are very joyous and seem like they're living the dream, once they've done these trips, and then when you actually speak to them one-on-one, you find that they are still struggling quite a bit with the old post-trip blues and things like that.
And you know what, it's only kind of if I'm honest, it's only kind of, I'm wow, nearly 3 years home. Wow. And it's taken a good two and a half years, despite, all people see on my Facebook stuff is usually really, hey, look, wow, cool thing. She's off with her dogs. She's off doing this, or she's off doing this. And in lockdown, you keep busy, of course. And, there's been a lot of great times, but there's always been something niggling away where I still, I don't want to put that route down. I don't want to, I'm going to be shut down again. And, it's only now my brain is kind of settling, maybe in the last few months, where my brain is genuinely settling to the point of, it'll never fully settle, let's face it. I'm not that kind of person, but I'm always sort of wondering what next. But really, I'm sort of going, okay, now I really need to get my teeth into something again, because there's a lot to be said for that too.
Having like a direction and a focus.
And now I'm starting working on doing more stuff based in Wales, and I guess lockdown has kind of helped me out there a little bit in that sense, and just going, okay, no, actually put a few routes down, there's nothing wrong with that. You can still go away. And what I've learned is that I don't want to go and live on the road again. I was living on the road for 4 years, and I don't feel like I don't have the urge to go and live on the road again. I love being on the road, and I want to do lots of shorter journeys, and but to be out there for 4 years again, I don't know. I don't think I want that anymore. I think just a few routes is okay.
I sort of, in my mind, it was like, well, I've done that big trip. That's that done. Big tick. Next, move on. But I've got to admit, in the last year or two, maybe lockdowns accentuated it, but I've definitely started thinking to myself, I quite fancy doing this and that, like 3 or 4 month trips here and there. I've got this thing in my head about cycling around the UK. I don't know where that came from because I'm not a cyclist, but it just popped in my head that, well, you're a fat bugger, you need to lose weight, cycle around the UK. So I'm like, shit, that's going to have to happen now. And then I've got into rowing. Like the last couple of weeks, I've got into like rowing on a rowing machine to try and lose a bit of weight. And
I watched the video.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah. And then
That's great.
And then there's the Atlantic crossing. The Talisker Atlantic crossing, single-handed or pairs, whatever. Row the Atlantic, and it's like, ooh. That's a challenge. And I'm like, what are you talking about? You've never rowed a boat in your life. But all these things
there's the challenge.
I know. So all these things start firing off in my head, and I'm like, don't be a dick. How can you do that? So it's everything that I faced when I started thinking about the biking around the world thing. Now starts coming in my head now where I can't do that. And then I think, well, I can do that. Let's just go for it. And then you think, how do I afford it? Yeah. How can I take that amount of time off of life? Let's see.
Yeah. But that's funny, isn't it? Because it's funny because we actually said the opposite things about lockdown. Lockdown made you want to escape more and made me sort of settle a bit. But actually, I've also had those moments as well. And, I've said to my friends, when my friends have checked in on me and said, how you doing? I'm like, I just want to run, but I can't, and actually that feeling of wanting to run and go and do something completely crazy. And hey, why don't I just pack my bags and ride off? Oh, no, I can't because of lockdown, so I think it's done two things, but it's helped me to kind of say, okay, one thing I'll always want to go and do some challenge or something. I love challenges. I thrive on challenges. Yeah. But I also feel like happiness for me is finding a foot in both camps where, I'm just greedy, I suppose. But, and I suppose this is ideal for most people, for a lot of people, where you can actually have your base, you can have your, something running here, and yet you can go off that would be my ideal life. I've got my base and I've got my dogs, and because dogs bring me a lot of happiness. You can't have dogs on the road, so I've got my base, I've got my little happy chickens and my my rescued dogs and my whatever else, and then I can say, right, okay, see you in a couple of months, guys. I'm going to go off and do something ridiculous for a bit, and then I'm going to come back and we'll be happy again.
You can have your cake and eat it. Yeah,
and eat it. What's the point of having cake if you can't eat it? I never understood that.
100%, absolutely. How would you fancy tackling some questions? Because we've got quite a few to get through.
Bring it on. Yeah,
let's see where it goes. Right, we will go. First off, we'll go to the clan over on Patreon. So it's patreon.com/TeapotOne. First one is from Amish Rider. Now, I know Amish.
Cool name.
Yeah. He's a good lad. I don't know if you've ever seen any of my Spanish trip videos where there's a guy that goes straight over a roundabout, nearly kills himself and goes...
I haven't seen it.
That's my mate Amish. But anyway.
I like him already. Hi, Amish.
This is quite a grown-up question for him. From a cultural perspective, I'm surprised he even knew how to spell that. From a cultural perspective, cultural perspective, which country most subverted your expectations?
Oh,
Amish, your wife said that question. There's no way you came up with that question yourself. Sorry.
What's subverted? Is that like exceeded?
I think, yeah, which I'm assuming it's what cultural perspective, which country was the biggest surprise to you? It was the total opposite of what you thought it would be. That's what I'm assuming.
Oh, yeah, okay. Sorry, I get it now. Yeah. It's a total surprise to me. Good question. I mean, the first thing that springs to my mind is Iran, but it's almost a cliche now in that way, in that sense, because everybody sort of goes on about Iran that's been there, go on about it, don't they? But for good reason, I suppose. But I tell you what, I won't go into Iran because everyone's heard me and other people say how amazing it is, and it is. But I tell you where I loved was Sumatra.
All right.
Such a and I say yes, I loved it, and it did sort of it surprised me at how and I don't know what I expected though, really. But Sumatra, I had no idea what was going to be in Sumatra, and actually it was just such the most friendly place. In fact, sometimes it was too friendly. Like it's like I want to be alone now.
Yeah. People say that, don't they? They say, "Well, you not get lonely when you're away on these trips," and you're like,
yeah.
It's actually quite hard to be alone.
It really is at times, and definitely in places like Sumatra because they're so bloody friendly.
Yeah.
But I loved it. I found that the biker gangs, if you like, there who look like biker gangs, like the old-fashioned sort of British biker gangs, but on 150s and 125s. They have the RX King over there. Which is like a little two-stroke sort of crazy wheelie machine, which I really want one day. So did you say some people sent you a load of brew dogs when you mentioned brew dogs?
I did, yeah.
RX King. Yeah. You can get it imported from Indonesia. I don't think it'd be legal in this country, but
somebody out there will manage it. Someone will manage it.
But the culture there was just so cool. I got picked up by a these biker clubs, and they were passing me from one club to the next, and they were waiting for me at each city line, if you like, and taking me off for all these different experiences, whether it be trying durian fruit or trying to make me sick with hot chilies, or taking me to the mosque to meet all the other biker gangs who were all stood out there on a Friday night, or taking me to the illegal race circuit, at 3:00 in the morning, or whatever. It was just such a cool gang. But I did find sometimes it was a bit overwhelming in the sense of it was like having a police escort everywhere. They wanted to protect me so much. It was a bit of kind of misogyny, I guess, going on in a way, if you want to be unkind. But it also helped me out a lot because I never had to oil my chain while I was there. That got done for me, and I had to clean my bike. Not that I ever do, but no, there was such a cool. And such a great sense of humour as well. So
I found that in Russia. Like, for me, Russia is the country that was the biggest surprise in like how friendly the people were, because I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah. I
thought it was going to be a real cold place, and I'd have to work to have any interaction socially, and it was a polar opposite. Like I stayed with a mate of a mate, basically, in Moscow, and I was only supposed to be there for, I think, 3 nights with him. I was there for, I think, nearly 2 weeks, because he just kept saying. Initially, I was staying in a cheap hotel on the outskirts of the city, and after about 2 nights, he was like, "No, you come and live with me at my apartment." And then it was like, "Right, I've got us tickets for this. We're going here. We're going to do that. You've got to come and meet my cigar club, and then come and meet my whiskey club." And it was just like such a friendly place. And then he introduced me to this chap called Vladimir, funnily enough, who is the editor of like the Russian MCN, basically. It's the biggest motorbike magazine in Russia. And he'd ridden across Russia numerous times, but never... He basically looked at me and said, "You can't do it on a Gixxer. You can't do it on a sports bike, and it is very dangerous." So he did exactly what you were saying about arranging for me to meet all these different bike clubs, and he literally laid it all out. And I sort of left Moscow, that meeting with him, and thinking, that's amazing, but that's not what I want to do. I don't. Yeah. I want to ride this myself. I don't. So in the end, I never took him up on that kind of offer. But they were such friendly people.
Yeah, well, what you were saying about that's not what I want. There was actually a time in Malaysia when, again, extremely friendly people in Malaysia, a lot of bikers there, big biking community there. And I actually, at one point, people were organising so much for me, to the point where I'd be riding with some guy, and he'd have sorted the hotel out, he'd have sorted where we were stopping, and every stop, he says, "Oh, we just stop for a cup of tea here," or whatever. And that stop involved meeting a shitload more bikers, or the leader of whatever club, and now and I was honoured to meet this leader of this club or whatever, and then he'd give me a gift or something, and I'd be exhausted. And then we get, after 10 hours of riding or something, we'd get to this place that he'd arranged for us to stay, and there'd be a journalist there waiting for me. He says, there's a journalist waiting to speak to you. I'm like, whoa, okay, hang on a minute. This isn't what I signed up for.
Yeah.
And it sounds very ungrateful. And actually at the end, at one point, we parted. The day we parted company was when I actually said to him, look, I'm going this way now. And he's like, oh, wait. And I said, no, I'm going this way. You're not, you know. And I felt so bad because I said, look, I don't feel too good. And I genuinely didn't. I was just so tired and I needed some space. And I said, look, I don't feel too good. I'm going to go and book myself into that place over there. And he was just like, oh, I'll come. I said, no, just, I'm going. Thank you so much. I've got to go. Right. And I went and I left and I spoke to the reception at this hotel that I decided I was going to go to. And then they said, yeah, park your motorbike round the corner there. So I went to go and move it. By the time I got to back to reception, he was stood in reception. And I went, what are you doing? And I was about to sort of almost have a go at him. He says, oh, no, I just came to pay for your room.
Oh, what?
And then I'm leaving. I just came to pay for your room. And I was like, oh, no. and I I felt like such a bitch. I really felt awful. And then I went to my room and I cried. I just felt like, oh my God, I'm such a terrible person. But it was so overwhelming. And I think anyone who's been in that situation might understand, you know, but I did feel like such a bitch that day.
I bet. There's some great roads in Malaysia, isn't there? Up in I take it they must have taken you up into the highlands.
In the Highlands,
the Genting Highlands or something they call it, I think. Is
something like that, yeah.
Yeah, great biking roads.
And there was a British place there. There was a British cafe thingy there that had a red pill. In fact, I said to him, we had scones and tea. We had high tea, you know. And I said, God, the only thing missing is a red telephone box. And they said, oh no, come here, come this way. And there was
Seriously?
one around the corner. Yeah, it was so lovely.
Yeah, I like Malaysia. It was a cool place, real cool place.
Yeah, very cool place. Yeah.
Right, next question. Pete Hastelow. Now, there's about 4 different ones from him here. He says, Steph, you're like the Queen. You don't carry cash because you always tell me I owe you a pint.
Hello, Pete.
He's now saying, if not Rhonda the Honda, what other bike would you have used? First
what
off,
other bike would I have?
Who is Rhonda the Honda? Explain to people.
Rhonda the Honda is my CRF 250L, 2013, one of the first off the line, and that's how I got her for free, because I said to Honda, you give me one of those new bikes of yours and I'll prove that she's worthy, you know. Prove that she's a good bike. I'll take her around the world. And they went.
And that worked?
It worked, yeah. But I did have a good relationship with Honda already. They'd sponsored my off-road school. So I had a relationship with them, right. And I was closing the business down, and it was kind of like a golden handshake, like, gotcha. Go on then, you know. Yeah. Fair play to you, off you go. And they did say to me as well, you know, look, listen, if you you know, you can have the bike, we'll sign it over to you. If you decide you're going to go and live the rest of your life in Goa, then so be it. You don't owe us anything. And I wasn't sure if they were trying to get rid of me or just showing their appreciation for a good, you know, 5 years work. But no, so that was a cool bike. But and I do love that bike. But of course, I don't like to do the same thing twice. So I would have to choose a new bike. And I have thought about what it would be. I think it'd be, I don't know, you know. I do. It's a bit boring and predictable, though, isn't it? Like the Tigers. I really like the Tigers.
All right.
I think they're lovely bikes.
Which one would you go for?
Well, it's the new 800, is it?
The 800, yeah.
Yeah, it's such a nice bike, and sort of does everything. But then at the same time, I think I'd like to do my body's a bit broken when it comes to doing silly things, you know, on like small, you know, I'd quite kind of like to give it a go on a monkey bike. My brain wants to do it on a monkey bike. Yeah. My body says, go for something comfortable, love, you know. so
like
yeah,
a
it's a tough one. Yeah, no, I wouldn't go that far. Come on.
Have you ridden a Goldwing?
I never have, and I never will.
Honestly, I haven't, but I am dying to, because
really?
Everyone I know, like all the other sort of bike YouTube lads, Missenden Flyer,
all the other old boys, the other old boys, you mean?
All us other old boys that sort of ride GSs and Africa Twins, and Chopsy, Lamb Chops will be going crazy because he still likes the sports bikes and things. But all of them have ridden the Goldwing. and every single one of them has just been blown away by it, and I'm like, that is just a superb bike. So I'm dying to get
I
a shot.
think that. No, that's the thing, and it's great to be able to sort of take the piss out of each other's bikes. But I do know, I have heard a lot about Goldwings, and when you see the videos of people like really good riders doing clever stuff with them, it's just like, wow. Apparently the balance is brilliant, all that kind of stuff. But it's a bit like a trike for me. I love the look of trikes. I think they look pretty cool and they're a bit different. But would I want to ride one? No, it's not. I mean, it's like all the elements of a motorbike, all the bad bits of a motorbike and a car, really. When you put the two together, you're open to the elements, but you can't squeeze through the traffic. So it seems a bit.
I'm the same. I'm totally the same. But I'm also very aware that there have been so many bikes that I've thought, I'm never riding one of them. Or when I have come to ride it, I've thought, I'm not going to enjoy this. And I've been blown away. The GS is a prime example. Sorry to mention the GS. People are throwing things at their screens as we speak.
Yeah, I can hear them screaming.
Yeah. But the GS was one. Harleys. The Harleys were another one. They're not,
I'm always sort of famously taking the piss out of Harleys, but I don't really have anything against them. I just quite enjoy taking the piss out of them.
It's just it's the experience. I mean, they're not fantastic mechanical machines. They're not great handling. But there's just something about them. There's something about them when you ride them. It's like, oh, this is different.
Yeah, and that's the thing, isn't it? It's that different thing, and I think a lot of us as bikers aren't necessarily looking for the perfectly well behaved machine. We're looking for something with a bit of character. Yeah. Yeah. And if and there's something for everyone's personality, and that's what I love about it. And whilst I will always take the piss out of people's choice of bike because that's part of the fun, I never mean any of it because I love the fact that there's so much for everyone, from the monkey bike to the Goldwing, and
absolutely,
and everything in between. But so as I've been, dare I say it, getting older or slightly, but a lot more wear and tear in the wrists and the neck and the back and the hips and everything else. I am starting to look more at city uppy bikes, and and stuff like that. And the things that we used to take the piss out of when we were in our 20s on our matte black, chopped bikes or whatever, and going, oh, look at him with his, heated vest or his sit up and beg bike or whatever. Now you go, oh, actually that looks quite comfy,
heated
doesn't
vest.
it?
Oh yes. Heated socks. No, now you're talking.
Give me the lot. All of it.
Exactly, yeah. Right, Pete's got another question. Now, this is going to take some explaining.
Oh, he's so greedy.
Did you keep Ted Simon's underwear he gave you?
He's got a good memory.
Explain.
Oh, do I want to explain? I think just leave it hanging. No, that's what I did with his underwear.
Ted's still smiling.
Ted's still smiling, bless him. No, actually, this was at the Overland event, at the same one where you were speaking and I interrupted you saying, Bruce, do you know who I am?
Yeah,
so what happened?
And everyone turned around looking at you. What?
I know, yeah. And I thought, I'm not sure if I ever actually explained that. And that was such a risky thing to do. But what had happened was I was at the event, obviously, as a speaker and getting drunk like everybody else. And I'd been challenged to raise some money for charity by doing lots of crazy things, and people were sending me in requests. Like one of them had said, go up to people and say to as many people as you can, saying, do you know who I am? So, I mean, I was like, oh, great, thanks for that. Cheers. So the first one I did it on was on a bin man. And I just went up to the bin man and said, do you know who I am? And he was just like, no. I was like, what if I do this? And I went to your presentation, did the same thing. And one of them was get an item of clothing from 5 motorbike legends or something like that. Oh, and in fact, I think didn't I get your buff or something? I got something from you.
Yes. Oh, yeah, you did. Is that why you took it?
I remember. Sorry?
Is that why you took it? I thought you just wanted my buff.
That's why. Yeah. And then so I got I think I got some knickers from Lisa, as in Lisa and Simon. Right. And I got Ted Simon's underwear. And he actually said to me, I asked him in the evening after a few tequilas, I was like, Ted, Ted, I actually said, can I just have a piece of clothing from you, hoping that he would offer his underwear. And he did. He didn't let me down. He was like, oh, well, you could have my knickers, I suppose, you know. And
leopard skin thong.
Yeah, and he says, but I'll have to rinse them out first. I'll give them to you in the morning. And I was like, that'll do. Thanks very much. And then in the morning, I was in that beautiful little coffee shop drinking gorgeous coffee with that guy with the, what do you call it? Not the harmonica. What do you call it?
Like the squeeze box thing. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the squeeze box. It was lovely, but I was really hungover. I'd had maybe an hour's sleep. I had my shades on, looking all rock and roll, drinking me coffee, and Ted Simon wanders over with his freshly rinsed out underwear.
Our lovers, a little memento.
Oh, bless him! It was absolutely classic. It was brilliant, lovely. But no, I don't still have them because they went to. The person who'd set that challenge in the first place has a motorbike shop, and he was going to actually frame them and give the money to the charity. So nice. I don't know what happened to them after that, if they ever went up on the wall.
But... Course they were.
Yeah.
Right, last one from Pete. He's saying, seeing as you've sung karaoke on all 7 continents, what's your favourite song? And would you do a duet with Bruce? Jesus. Pete, you're a prick.
Oh. He is a prick. I've always said that. Oh, God, my favourite song. I'm trying to think of one that I know the words to now because without the actual thing. So I like Tina Turner songs. I'm
not singing right now. Not a chance.
Oh, you're not?
No.
Oh, really?
You have to wait till we're steaming drunk at like the Overland or something. Then no problem.
Okay. Well, I'm going to hold you to that. And so is Pete, by the sounds of it.
Yeah, you will.
I love the Proud Mary song. That's a cool song. And, of course, Janis Joplin. Anything by Janis Joplin.
Okay.
Or Dusty Springfield. I love all the old sort of soulful, cool stuff like that. So, yeah.
God, I feel a right Luddite. I was going to say, like, Living on a Prayer or any Proclaimers.
We can any Proclaimers. Well, we'll do the song of your choice when we go and do that. When we do that live.
Right, you're on. Pete, you better be there. Right, next one. John Gore. Hi, Steph. You did a solo ride. Would you consider a group ride around the world and on a larger touring bike? Sounds like you've got a customer.
I missed that because I was coughing. Sorry. Would I do it on a larger touring bike?
Yeah. Would you do a group ride around the world and would you do it on a bigger touring bike?
Oh, it sounds like he's making me an offer there.
I think
so the answer is yes. Yeah. I would do it on a larger touring bike and I would do it with a group. Just for comparison, if nothing else. I never rule anything out. I'm not sure whether I can't promise I'd enjoy it. I don't know. It's I do like group events. This was a very specific had to be solo ride that I did, but I'm very much open to group stuff, and it always surprises me how much I enjoy it because I often think that I'm a bit of an antisocial cow sometimes, and often choose to be sort of recharging on my own somewhere. But then I can go and burst out for short periods and go, hey, I'm here, and then I have to go and hide away again. But so for a long period with a group might be difficult. But yeah, I would probably give it a go. I think you'd probably either hate everybody or form really strong friendships.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's
only time would tell. That's part of the adventure, I suppose.
Absolutely, yeah. You got to give it a go. Like I do tours myself. I've got a bit of a tour company, and it's only trips to Spain generally, biking trips to Spain, and they're only a week long. But I find at the end of the week, like when we get on a ferry to come back to the UK, I am knackered. I literally say to the boys, I have a beer, I have a few beers with them when we get on the boat, and then it's literally, I will see you when we get to Portsmouth, and I just go to the cabin and sleep. So I can't imagine the sort of concentration needed for like a 6 month or 12 month. Yeah.
Yeah, but you are in that sense, because I've done a lot of tours as well, as in like organised tours, and in that sense, it's a short burst of, you need some extreme energy there, because if you're the organiser of the tour, you have so much to think about, and not just where we're going, what we're doing, is everybody safe, what happens if somebody has an accident, what happens, You've also got the socializing at night. You're expected to be, and you want to be, sociable and, up for it and there till, last one standing at 3 a.m. or whatever. And then you've got to be professional head in the morning. And so after a couple of weeks, you are just wiped out completely. You're just saturated. You don't want any company. And I like I said, it's kind of surprises me at how much I enjoy those short bursts, though. Was it last year? I can't remember. Must be year before now, because we're just into a new year. I did the Girls on Top, the Everest Base Camp trip.
Oh, yeah.
And that was with like 23 women. And, I was thinking, yeah, I really want to do this. Part of me really wants to do this. There's a little piece of me that's going, shit, I'm terrified. I'm going to deal with 25 women, in an extreme situation for a couple of weeks. How am I actually going to cope? And thankfully, my friend Danny, or Danny the Leg, as I call her, I have nicknames for all my close friends. And Danny the Leg, she was coming along with me. And I thought, oh, thank God, because she's like my rock in these situations. She's always very cool and calm and collected. Even if she's shitting herself in her head, she always looks really calm.
Yeah.
And she listens to me moaning or having a rant or whatever. And we always share a room together. After we met on a trip in America, actually, and again, I had to share a room with her. I thought, oh God, who am I going to share with? And we're lifelong friends. So it always surprises me at how sociable I can be. But she was there. And at one point, at the end of the trip, she woke me up at 6 a.m. and we didn't get in until God knows what time, after a really quite an extreme event. And she said, come on, get up. Some of them are leaving this morning. They're getting on their plane soon. And we've got to go and say goodbye. And I'm like, fuck off. I'm not getting out of bed. I was so tired. I couldn't. And then I'm glad nobody took a picture, because she said, come on, you've got to go and say goodbye. I'm like, ugh. And I kind of got my dressing gown on. We didn't even I think we didn't get our luggage until the next morning. So all I had was my long johns on, my muddy, dirty, sweaty long johns, and the hotel dressing gown over the top of that. And we went into the breakfast room, and my face was twisted and my hair was baked to my head, and I was just like, oh, bye, And amazing how she dragged me there. I have no idea, but so
Steph
I was
Jeavons,
so
ever the
wiped out.
professional.
Ever the professional, yeah. But I tell you what, it was such a cool trip, and we're still in touch. We still have reunions, and we've got our own, of course, the WhatsApp group, and there's such cool women that were on board. So I do really enjoy group events, actually. Yeah.
Awesome. Everest Base Camp, what's that like?
It was cool. I mean, the trip, it's getting there is obviously the adventure. When you get there, it's kind of, I mean, we all thought, okay, well, we're here now. Again, it was like, it was all leading up to this amazing moment. And actually the amazing moment was the getting there in the first place, the old cliche, I suppose. And but it was at 5 o'clock in the morning. That we couldn't see Everest when we got there because it was all cloudy, and it was at 5 a.m. the next morning that she appeared, and all sort of pink and misty. It was gorgeous. Oh wow! So yeah, it was a lovely trip. And Tibet is such a stunning place.
So another place I want to go to, but one day we'll get there. One day. Right, yeah. The next one. Now, have you heard of a chap called Pete English?
Yes.
You have? Right. Pete's sort of...
Why do I know that name, though?
He's very well known on this podcast for his questions. Pete has a unique way of he's got a unique question style. They definitely make you think. So...
Oh, God.
Pete says, Happy New Year. Hope you're both fitting well. Cheers, Pete. Not too bad, thank you. Question.
Here's Pete.
Do you trust a man with a limp handshake? And if not, why not?
Trust, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if trust comes into it, but would I go into business with him? No. Would I get into bed with him? No. I just kind of Yeah, it doesn't earn them. There is something about a handshake, isn't there?
Definitely. Yeah, there's nothing worse than just that wet, cold, weak.
What
is that?
this is sort of sweaty, wet, sort of, yeah. And somebody who just grabs the tips of your fingers as well.
I hate
That's
that.
just like, oh, fuck off.
I want to grab their arm and go, there you are, shake my hand.
Yeah. Pull them in for a big hug. Yeah.
That's a few beers down the line, that normally.
Yeah.
Right, there's a second part. Talking about tossers, what's upset Piers Morgan the most already this year? What's that about?
Were we talking about tossers? Oh, yeah, no, we were, I suppose. What's upset Piers Morgan most this year?
He says,
did he say?
I'm talking about tossers. What has upset Piers Morgan the most already this year? Am I missing something?
I have no idea. Don't really watch Piers Morgan much, but
No, me.
He'll have been ranting about coronavirus, I'm sure.
I thought we're missing that, Pete. Sorry, pal.
Yeah, sorry, Pete.
Oh, we've got biking royalty here. YouTube royalty. The Missenden Flyer. Have you heard of the Missenden Flyer?
I have.
All right. Andy, he says, hi Steph and Bruce, I know the Honda CRF 250L is a brilliant bike and clearly you got on well with yours on your trip. If you were the chief designer at Honda, what changes would you make to the bike to make it even better for a round the world adventure?
Okay. Well, problem is you start changing things too much and then you start losing out on other things. So if I could make it lighter, I would.
Right.
Just because, okay, it is a light bike, it's a 250, but it's designed to look like the enduro version, isn't it? The X or whatever. Right. And they're a lot lighter. And so for a 250, it is actually quite a heavy bike. So it'd be nice if it was a bit lighter, but I don't think there's much else I would change on it. What I did change on it was very little before I left. And the things that I changed was what they pretty much put into the rally. So they put the screen on it, they I don't know, I might make it a little bit lower to the ground because I'm so short, such a short ass. But I don't know. Other than that, it doesn't really need much else, does it? You could spend a fortune on it, but then, the reason why it's such a cheap bike is because it's just a basic, simple, does what it says on the tin kind of a bike.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
that's a pretty boring answer. But
how much off road did you do then? What sort of percentage would you say were you off road on your trip, trails and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a difficult one. I'd say maybe 20% off road.
Yeah, I was about the same, I think.
And I think a lot of us go off sort of ready for the big off-road adventure, really.
But there's roads
then
everywhere.
It turns out most of it's road.
Yeah.
But it is nice to be ready for that 20%.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also the 80% of the road is not necessarily smooth paved road. So. And so it's nice to be able to. I would always choose a small. I think a small agile bike is a pretty good way to go because it nips through the traffic. You're not looking to go fast. If you're looking to go fast, then there's people like Nick Sanders who wants to go really fast around the world, and I have nothing against that. I have nothing bad to say about that because we've all got our own challenges and our own drives for doing things. That's not for me. I don't want to speed through places, although I might one day. So, but I wanted something that was going to keep me nice and steady, be able to nip around through the traffic. And a lot of places you can't do even 60 miles an hour. You've got religious cows in the way. You've got you've got potholes. You've got chickens. You've got children. You've got sand. You've got whatever. And but those dirt trails up through the mountains, knowing that you are capable of picking your own bike up and dragging it out of a ditch and taking that dirt road to wherever it leads is just a wonderful feeling. Knowing that your bike is not a burden to you, regardless of the situation, is kind of a cool thing. So, but of course, there'll be the odd time where you're going, oh shit, I wish I had a bigger bike because this is a really long, boring straight road. Ruta 4, is it, on down through Argentina and Chile. towards Ushuaia. That was the
Ushuaia.
most boring, long, straight road, you know. So
is that the gravel section? The last little gravel section? No.
Oh no, there's that last little gravel section, but before that, you've got like just a long, straight, windy road all the way, and it's just like fucking hell. Just I want a faster bike today, but. Most of the time, I was grateful for a little one.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I got to admit, like for me, I would say it's because of the bike I did it on. Plus, I don't have any off-road skill. It's well documented on my vids that I don't know what I'm doing off-road. But it was the off-road sections that are the most memorable to me because it was kind of hard work on a jigsaw. Plus, the sense of achievement when you get through it. You know, you're just like, wow, I did that.
Yep.
We managed it. Happy days. Those bits really stick in my mind. I don't know if you noticed, but I remember there were bits of my trip. There was parts in Russia. There was parts in, I remember Chile, the Atacama Desert and stuff, where I'm on a road. It is a highway. You know, there is tarmac, asphalt. And I see somewhere and I'm like, I've seen this in someone's video before. And then you look and you think, I know exactly what you've done. You've just ridden a little bit off the road into the dirt and taken a picture or got some video footage and you're like, you saucy bugger, I see how this works.
Do you know what? That's actually quite funny because, I think we might all be a little bit guilty of that occasionally, like, you know, just getting the tarmac out of the way and getting the dirt shot, you know. But there are some people who take that to the extreme. And I think it doesn't matter what you do. If you want to stick to the tarmac, do it. Just be honest about it, you know. And make it your ride. It doesn't matter what. Forget everybody else's expectations. You go and have your trip and enjoy it, and that's the main thing. But we're not breaking records. We're not saving lives here. We're not heroes. We're just out to selfishly have a good time, right? So let's not pretend. But there are some people I have seen who like, for example, there was this woman. I saw this image of this woman who took the shot, who swore that she was. I'm not even going to mention the make of bike in case anybody puts two and two together. I can't even remember her name, so I don't want to be. But I saw that it was a couple of years ago now. But I saw this picture, and she was saying she just wild camped. And there was a picture of her next to her tent and her bike looking really gorgeous and sexy and blow-dried hair and perfect makeup and eyeliner and mascara to die for. She looked stunning. Fair play. It was a great photograph. There's no fucking way she'd wild camped that night. There's no hairdryers. There's no hairdryers in the wild. I'm sure of it, you know, so... I could be wrong. Maybe she just naturally looks like that. But I had somebody once say, "Sorry, go on."
It's maybe something Touratech do. It's maybe a Touratech hairdryer that you plug into your
bike. But I tell you what, I had somebody once say to me on Facebook. I'll never forget it. They said, Steph, you know, you're so brave. And I'm thinking, because I ride my motorbike in some cool places and stuff. And they were like, no, you're so brave because you do all these video diaries with looking such a mess with no makeup and your hair all over.
Thanks very much.
I was like, cheers, okay. At least I'm keeping it real, you know?
Absolutely. Right, cheers for that, TMF. Next one, Johnny Hackinson. Hi, Steph. I'm sure here we go. I'm sure Bruce told you already that he too rode a bike around the world, but can you tell us what inspired you to do it? Well, we kind of touched on that, didn't we?
We covered that, I think. Yeah, we covered that one already.
Yeah. So right at the start, Johnny, head back there if you
rewind.
You didn't pick it up. Paul Partridge. Hi, Steph and Bruce. How you doing, Paul? If you had the opportunity to ride any of the continents again, which would it be? And part two, if you could not ride the CRF, which bike would you choose? Again.
We kind of did the bikes already, but which continent would I ride again? I want to do them all again, but in sections, I suppose. But Africa, I absolutely love Africa as a continent. I love it. It's such an interesting place, you know, with so much culture and wildlife. I love wildlife, it's such an interesting place, and some people say it's the last true place that you can have an adventure. I don't agree, because I believe you can have an adventure in your back, in your back garden, but it depends on your imagination, But but I do love Africa for that. Yeah.
What route did you do in Africa then?
Okay, so I went up from South Africa up to Angola, and then across, and then up the east coast. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Right. How long was that?
I would have.
Sorry, go on.
I was going to say I'd love to circumnavigate Africa. I want to go all the way around. That is something I'd still like to do. But were we going to say how long did it take?
Yeah.
Do you know? I can't remember. I think it was. Maybe was it a year in the end?
Wow.
Oh no, 8 months or something like that. Maybe.
Wow.
I can't remember.
It's such a good time.
Did it actually happen? I have no idea.
Yeah, Africa's still on my list because it beat me, and I want to go back and sort of tick that one off the box. I want to go. I tried to circumnavigate round, and basically the first quarter of it, I got to Mauritania, and it was just a bad time. So yeah, I would like to go back and give that another bash, definitely.
It's worth it. I got to a point where I was in Kenya and they wouldn't let me through Ethiopia, and I was kicking and screaming and like, oh no, and what happens now if I can't get through Ethiopia? There's no other way around, sort of thing. And because you'd have to kind of go through South Sudan, which you can't do, and all that kind of thing. And so it was a touch and go for a while, but they eventually let me through, thankfully, only because I had two passports. I have a Canadian and a British passport, and it was only because I could change passports that I got a second bite at the apple, so to speak, and they let me through. So.
Oh wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Why is that then? Like, was there an issue with the British passport with where you'd been before, or?
No, it wasn't particularly where I'd been. It was the fact that Ethiopia can be quite bureaucratic, bizarrely bureaucratic, and they like to stamp their feet occasionally. Yeah. And before that, the week before, they'd been accepted. So they'd say to you, okay, well, you can come in as long as you have a letter from your embassy saying that your embassy are prepared to take full responsibility for you financially and anything else, whatever. And of course, your embassy is not going to do that. But if the shit hits the fan, your embassy is going to basically, look after you. And no embassy will do that. So what the embassy do is write a letter saying, we can confirm that we can't provide this letter that you ask for. And you take the letter saying we can't give this letter to the Ethiopian embassy, and they say, that'll do, stamp it, away you go.
Yeah.
When I got there, they changed their minds and said, no, we've changed our minds. This letter isn't good enough. So I'm like, but you accepted this last week. And even the day before, my French friend who I'd been traveling with a bit, or I'd met in Kenya, he got through, no problem. And they, in fact, gave him 3 months, whereas normally they only give you a month. So, and then the next day they said no to me. They changed their minds, and they changed the rules just like that. And then I had a week or 3 weeks, I think, in the end, messing around back and forth. I felt quite ill as well at that point, and so they were messing me around, and I was running all over the place. And then eventually I went to the Canadian embassy, and they said, look, we can't do this letter either, but we can do you a similar letter to what the British British embassy gave you. And they did, and I took that in, and they accepted it, and,
wow.
and they let me through in the end. It's just like, what was that all about then?
The wonder of visas and borders, eh? Fun and games.
The joys,
Fun and
the
games.
Joys.
Right, next one. Stephen Dunn Sims. I've already put this on Facebook, but I'll add it here just in case. Well, good job, Stephen, because I always go here first. Happy New Year to you both. I'm doing a Saddle Sore 1000 in June, Land's End to John O'Groats. What's your advice for staying awake and comfortable? Also, what would your guilty pleasure bike be that your friends would think you're crazy to have? Right.
Good question.
So you know what a saddle sore is, I take it, I'm assuming? The iron butt thing, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I assumed it was that. I've not heard of that particular one, but I assumed it was that. Okay, so good luck with that one. What was the first half of the question again?
So he's doing the saddle sore, 1,000 miles in 24 hours, Land's End to John O'Groats. What advice do you have for staying awake and comfortable?
Okay, staying awake. I've never had trouble staying awake whilst riding a bike. I heard some people saying they fell asleep riding a bike. I've never had that. There's almost too much to think about.
Done it once. I said that.
Really?
I did. I said that. I'd never had an issue with it before, and I fell asleep once. I was riding to Scotland after a night duty, but I nodded off on the bike. Yeah.
Wow. Scary shit.
Yeah, it was.
But yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I guess just keep stopping regularly for breaks. Lots of biscuits in your pocket, and if all else fails, Red Bull.
I found like staying hydrated. I found that was probably the biggest sort of lesson about me that I learned. Well, not biggest, but one of the lessons I learned about me on the world trip was being dehydrated really affects me badly. Like my concentration goes, my temperament. I have no patience for anything if I'm dehydrated. So I started to learn that if I've got a border coming up, get water in me and make sure I've got water for the border.
Definitely, that's so true. Yeah, I've got to the points where I've not fallen asleep, but I've gone, oh, that grass verge looks really comfy. Yeah. And so hydration is really a good one, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, and like you just said, Steve. This is a 24-hour challenge, so keep your sugar levels up, keep hydrated. When you stop for fuel, get off and make sure you just do 5 minutes of stretch. That's what I've always found when I do the Riders Royal British Legion 1,000 mile in 24 hours. I normally do that every year. What I find is stretch, just a couple of minutes stretch every time you fuel up, just gets the blood flowing, gets the oxygen going around your body again, and it's amazing what difference that makes. And if you can take 10 minutes, have a 10-minute kip if you need it. Just a power
stretching
kip.
Stretching is really important, though. That is so important. Yeah,
definitely. His next part of the question: what would your guilty pleasure bike be that your friends would think you're crazy to have?
Oh,
that's your trike, isn't it?
No, I don't want a trike. I don't.
Well, you heard it here first. Steph Jeavons going to be on a trike.
I do have a friend in Canada who he got me to sit on his Harley, and
wait. Sorry.
Don't edit that. Don't edit that. Yeah. That he called Princess, and he took a photograph of me on his Harley, and he kept putting it up on Facebook going #Harley lover. Harley lover, secret Harley lover. That was it. But no, not really for me though. I don't know. I don't really have a secret. No, don't really have one. What about you? Do you have one?
I mean, I'm genuinely kind of taken with Harleys. I really enjoyed.
You like the Harley.
I really enjoyed the Fat Boy. I loved the sound and the feel of riding the Fat Boy. But then I've just had the Triumph Rocket 3, and to me, out of all the bikes I've ridden so far, that's sort of, I would say, the closest competitor to the Fat Boy. The Fat Boy wins it on the engine, on the sound, but the Triumph wins it with everything else for me.
I've got to say, okay, I'll admit it. So I drove through because I was support vehicle. I was the support vehicle on this particular motorbike trip across America, and we drove through Sturgis during the Sturgis rally, and there was a point where I was just surrounded by Harleys, like the whole truck was just surrounded by Harleys, and I thought, whoa, it was like that sort of feeling you get with a V8 engine where it kind of goes through you, or a roar of a lion as well. That's another one that sort of vibrates through you. And I thought, oh, actually, you know what? That was actually quite cool. I was a little bit turned on by that sound. So, so Harleys occasionally in the right lighting and the right mood can turn me on. So, and that's the last time I'm ever admitting that.
In the right place, they make sense. But when it's pissing down on some shitty traffic-strewn British road, you're like, this is not the environment for a Harley.
And particularly sort of twisty Welsh or Scottish roads, right?
Yeah.
You know, they're just not necessarily ideal. But hey, you know, as we said before, we don't need ideal. We just want something that gives us a bit of pleasure, right?
Whatever, pardon the expression, but whatever tickles your
And it
danglies.
turns you.
Absolutely. That's it.
Exactly.
I have a thing for electric bikes. You ever ridden an electric bike?
Oh dear.
Well impressed.
Do you know what I did? I did once many years ago when they first came out. I think it was probably a good 10 years ago, and Zero came out with a dirt bike.
Oh yeah.
And I was working with Honda at the time, and we were doing like this display day where all the manufacturers came together, and we brought our dirt bikes all to the same spot and let people try all these different bikes. And Zero brought their first dirt bike. And people were allowed to test it out on the scramble track, and I was just like, "Oh, can I have a go?" And they said, "Yeah, wait till all the sort of customers have gone, and then come and have a play." And I jumped on it, and I rode around this scramble track, and I could not believe the torque, for example. And the fact that the problem was when there was no noise, the fact there was no engine noise. When I'm going around the corner or taking a jump, and I would go, "Fucking hell!" and screaming in my helmet, and go, "Whoa!" And there was no engine noise to drown it out. So it was. Everyone could hear me scream, but I did thoroughly enjoy it. That's the only electric bike I've ridden, actually.
You should try the new ones. Zero are still. There's two main sort of industry leaders commercially. You know, for like commercial electric bikes these days, and that's Zero, and then there's an Italian one called Energica. So the two of them are pretty much leading. There's a few other new ones coming on the horizon now, but for your big electric bikes to rival, you know, your big petrol bikes that most people would own, it's those two. And there's a company called English Electric Motor Company based over in, is it Ipswich or Norfolk? But I'm sure they would be more than willing to give you a loaner, or even if you wanted, you can go and visit them. They've got an off-road track built there. They've got bars. They have bands play it when.
Really?
Yeah. When
what are they called again?
English Electric Motor Company.
Oh, they sound cool. I'll go and check those out.
I'll put you two in touch if you want. I'll drop you a contact for them, and you'd be surprised.
Yes, please.
Modern electric bikes are pretty special.
I'm in. You know, I actually did contact Zero when I got back. You know, when I said I was writing that list of crazy things to do.
Yeah.
I contacted Zero and said, "Hey, like, how about you give me a bike and I will, or how about we work together on a project and I ride one of your bikes around Africa." And we'll get like the world record for the longest ever journey on a electric bike, and which was like the record at the time was something like 6,000 miles around Europe or something. It wasn't exactly difficult to beat. But of course, we'll do it around Africa as well, which would be really cool, because when things go wrong, we'll get a film of like all the locals helping out and stick it on the back of a truck. And, you know, I had this great idea thinking it'd be brilliant. And, you know, it doesn't matter if it goes wrong. That's all part of the adventure. That was my mentality. And they thought about it and they took it to their sort of Europe head office or whatever. And it came back as not sure we're quite ready for that one yet, Steph. So, which is probably quite sensible.
Because I'm working on the round the world by electric.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Yeah. I mean, it's good fun. I mean, it's the future, of course. So we've got to embrace it, haven't we?
Yeah. I think there's lots of minuses, but there's a lot of pluses with it. And there's even in the couple of years that I've sort of had them on my horizon, there's such development and progress come even in the last couple of years. It's phenomenal.
Absolutely.
So it's pretty exciting.
So if I really need a pee right now, are you gonna keep that in, or are you gonna edit it out?
I can edit that bit out, no problems. I'll go as well then. We'll do a toilet break. Right, folks, while we have a little natural break, some more sponsor readouts. We're also brought to you by Ultimate Add-ons. Ultimate Add-ons are the premium manufacturer of mobile phone and action camera mounting solutions for motorcycles. With a kit for any bike and a proven track record of creating products that keep your devices safe, secure and easily accessible, the Ultimate Add-ons product range is ideal for any rider, from the commuter to the round-the-world adventurer. Why shell out on an expensive GPS system when you could use your smartphone, keeping it charged and within reach to take photos of your travels at the same time? Ultimate Add-ons waterproof, shockproof and dustproof tough cases are available for all flagship smartphone models and are designed by riders for riders. Find out why Ride magazine gives Ultimate Add-ons their coveted Best Buy certification. Keep riding this winter with Ultimate Add-ons. It's all about the journey. And if you use the code TeapotOne10, you'll get 10% off. That's TeapotOne, TeapotOne, with the number 10. TeapotOne10. We are also brought to you by TempRocket. TempRocket is a unique, powerful online solution for finding and booking temporary staff. Harnessing the power of online technology, the platform transforms temporary staff recruitment by bringing the three key players, hirers, agencies and contractors, together in one place to deliver a quicker, more efficient solution for all parties 24/7. TempRocket incorporates an innovative online bidding system through which hirers and agencies compare details and costs, then bid for a contractor with the option of making a counter bid, accepting or declining an offer until they find the ideal candidate. Making life easier for contractors and freelancers, creating more business for agencies and simplifying the recruitment process for the hirer. TempRocket's a win-win-win. Please visit temprocket.com, that's TEMPROCKET.com for more information, and tell them Teapot One sent you. Okay, folks, back to the podcast. Right, so welcome back. Let's carry on with some of these questions then. D. Simon Nines. A trip can require a great amount of planning, yet it is difficult, if not impossible, to foresee all possible circumstances. In your experience, which event was the most unexpected and how did you overcome it? Ooh. Over to you for that one.
Oh God, so many. So was it the wind that blew me off my motorbike in Patagonia, or was it the landslide that nearly took me off a mountain? But probably the most unexpected. And I have told the story quite a few times, so forgive me. But if you've heard it before, but it really was totally unexpected. Was the Himalayan? No, sorry, not the Himalayan. The Hindu pilgrimage in India. Where I basically was just riding along one day, minding my own business in India, going, I'll just go this way, I'll just go that way, and I'll stop whenever I feel like it, and going, look at these wonderful monkeys on the side of the road, look at this elephant decorated, and I go, wow, there's a lot of people wearing orange. There seems to be quite a lot of people wearing orange. What's going on? And people carrying buckets of water. And I'm still none the wiser. I'm just going, strange people in India. And because there's always strange things happening in India, right? Yeah. There is nothing strange because everything's kind of strange. And then it got busier and it got busier. And eventually I ended up in the middle of the busiest and the biggest Hindu pilgrimage in India, and thousands of people around me. I was in a gridlock, so it took me several hours to do 10 kilometers, about 8 hours to do 10 kilometers. And I got dehydrated. I couldn't move, literally, I couldn't move. And the people around me were going, "You're crazy, you shouldn't be here." And I'm like, "No shit, Sherlock," and what do you expect me to do? And that, I mean, I nearly fainted, and I had to hold on to the bike, and I was sort of going, if you faint now, you're done. They'll get crushed, and because there were stampedes coming through and all sorts, and that was probably, pardon me, that was probably one of my scariest moments, and definitely the most unexpected.
Wow.
And I got out of there thanks to the help of one guy who gave me some of his water, because I'd run out several hours previously, and helped me drag the bike through the crowd into a ditch, and then along the ditch, and then out of the ditch, and then eventually to a barricade, a police barricade, that they'd taken over a hotel and were using it as a base. And eventually they let me in when I saw my red face, and they're like, no, you can't come in. I was like, you let me in. So the Welsh swearing came out, and they let me in. They went, okay, let her in. And and I stayed there overnight listening to AC/DC, dancing around the room in my knickers going, my God, I'm alive. How cool is that?
What, you stayed in a police station?
No, it was a hotel, but the police were using it as a base for the event. Yeah, so that was totally unexpected.
How long?
I mean, shockingly unexpected.
How long did you spend in India then?
again, I can't remember. About, I think it was about 8 weeks in all.
Wow. Would you go back?
So I've been back since. I went back and did a recce for a Tata Nano rally, little mini car rally that I was going to do. I should be going next month to do that, and unfortunately, obviously, that's been cancelled. But hey ho, we're not dwelling on these things. But
we've got a lot to make up for, haven't we?
I got to do the recce, so that was cool. But and I had so much fun doing the recce because India is one of those places that you get addicted to weirdly. You know, it's just like, because if you love adventure, then you're going to love India because it's so full of the unexpected, and it's full of colour and vibrancy and smells and dirt and all those other things. But amongst that, you find these gems and these amazing people and these big smiling faces and it tests you. It really does. And I absolutely loved it. I went there at the hottest time of the year. So that was completely stupid of me, you know, and I didn't really plan very well. And so I went this time in February in the car, and it was, what a difference. Wow, it is a completely different country when it's cooler.
Is it?
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's definitely somewhere I want to go to, for sure. Definitely, I want to do a little trip over there.
I mean, I've got all these horror stories, and as everybody has. And of course, before I went there, people told me only the horror stories. And then, so you're very nervous going in, and then you get there and you're like, oh my God. And I got an email from a guy saying, welcome to India. There are murderers and rapists on every corner, you know. And I'm like, oh, great. But then you find actually that, you know, of course, you know, same with everywhere else. People are friendly and helpful, and keep smiling, you'll be all right.
Everyone's always more afraid of their neighbour, aren't they? That's what I've always found, is wherever you go, they warn you about the next place, and you go there and they're even friendlier.
No, that's what I've always said in my presentations, is like, you know, it's like, you know, people are going, oh, we're okay, but, you know, watch out for those people. They'll kill you. Oh my God, you're going where? They'll kill you. And then you get there and they're like, oh no, we're okay. We you know, but they're, oh God, you're going where? You know? Yeah. So quite bizarre. And it's difficult to know what to believe, of course, because you stop believing anybody and you think, oh, look, I'll be fine. And that in itself is a danger, because you've also, you know, you've still got to be cautious. I mean, I think if I can be serious for a minute, I think there is a bit of a danger in the fact that a lot of us come back all the time saying, it's wonderful and safe out there and it's all good and it's lovely. And don't worry about it. It's all great. Go. And of course, that is the overall message. But of course, also be on your guard and be aware. I suppose that's common sense. But shit does happen.
Absolutely.
But I think as long as you kind of, you stay aware, but not presume that everybody's out to get you, because that in itself can cause incidents. Do you know what I mean? If you go out there smiling and trusting, but not naive, you know, you're choosing to be open and trusting and not presuming that everyone's out to get you. If you go out assuming everyone's out to get you, it's likely they will be, if that makes sense.
If you're on your guard, they'll be on their guard.
They will. There's definitely, we're animals at the end of the day. And if you watch dogs' behaviour, okay, if you watch a dog in a pack, the way they behave, creates a reaction. It's a chain reaction. And there's, you know, we are only, as arrogant as we are only animals really at the end of the day. So
very true. Very true. Yeah.
I'm sure people will be shouting at this. What is she talking about? But you know,
I've spoke about this quite a few times with other sort of overlanders that have come on, and it's true. It's something that now I forget every single time I talk about this, and someone always messages me going, "This is." I think is it the Polaris box? But anyway, there's a thing you're taught about conflict resolution in the old bill in the police, and it's like my attitude affects your attitude, that affects my attitude, which affects your attitude. And it's very true, as we've just discussed. And anyone that's been in that situation where, I'm not quite sure, how's this going to go? If you go in there like that, then you're just going to... That will feed, other people will feed off of your apprehension and your fear and maybe your aggression if you're feeling aggressive. Whereas if you go in like Sam Manicum with the smile, then generally a smile is what you'll get met with.
Yep, and there's a chemical reaction, there's a visuals, everything
Yeah.
makes such a big difference. So
Yeah.
it's I'm amazed that there's a name for it. You know,
Yeah, there is, yeah.
I keep finding these things. I keep finding these things out. I've gone out there, learned these things, and then figured it. And then I find out that somebody already figured this out 20 years ago and called it something.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, I think it's actually from like, I think it's an ancient either Middle Eastern or like Far Eastern type of philosophy. You know,
oh, of course,
it's
of course
one
they
of those,
figured it out. Yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah. I can't remember. I think it's
Brilliant,
Polaris box or something. I can't, something box. It's
Right.
known as. Somebody
Yeah.
will message me, I'm sure, and let me know.
I'm sure.
But as you said, though, you know, you also have to rely on the spidey senses, and if you get that feeling that
Yeah.
this ain't quite right, it's often a good idea to just withdraw.
Yeah. No, but at the same time, and this is something else, you know, this is from a different angle. You've got to practice those skills. It's not a natural, that gut instinct thing is not a natural thing necessarily. I think it gets better, it gets more precise the more you throw at it.
Yeah.
You need to expose it to scenarios, to situations before
Absolutely.
it can really be trusted fully. Because I can remember going through Eastern Europe and then through Turkey and being and going, oh my God, this guy's, you know, this situation is not good. And then finding out that it was nothing but good, and people were you know, and the person that I thought was going to, you know, come and attack me in the night actually was just going to come and bring me a hot chocolate, and you know, and so it's that positive reinforcement as well. Yeah, I think we definitely need to sort of practice those skills in a way by opening ourselves up to situations.
Yeah, definitely. Practice makes perfect and all that.
Yeah, for sure.
Right, next one. Paul Brown. Great to have Steph on. I was actually at the Ace the day she left for her trip.
Oh, cool. Hey, Paul.
Question to Steph. Since returning home, what have been the best and worst things that have come off the back of the trip? Now he's also said, I've just been told you did something similar, Bruce. Who knew? I get loads of grief for this because it always comes up on every single podcast.
Did you go around the world, Bruce?
No. Dover for coffee. That was it.
Oh God, I've forgotten the question again now. So the best and the worst things that came from off the back of the trip.
Off the back of the trip, yeah.
Oh, crikey, that's a bloody good question, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
I wish I had these questions in advance and I could have really thought of something clever to say.
See, this is the beauty. Like, I don't pre-read the questions either because like a lot of the time they get directed at me as well. So you get an honest sort of reaction, don't you?
Yeah. Yeah. So the best thing is that I feel like I've really, I've definitely got a more respect, more empathy for people, and more belief in myself. And okay, as corny or cheesy or whatever that sounds, it's true. You know, I definitely did come back a different person, and I couldn't tell you exactly what changed in me, but a bit more self-belief. You know, whenever you achieve anything, it gives you that extra brick in the wall, if you know what I mean, or breaks down that brick or whatever. You know, it gives you that extra bit of something in you, and so definitely, and that was what it was all about in the first place, I suppose. But in one way or another. But so yeah, I feel like I definitely gained something in my belief in myself, in my confidence, because my question was before I left, am I the sort of person that can do this? You know.
Yeah.
Aside from wanting to know more about cultures, aside from that's all a given, you know. I mean, the love of seeing nature and the world and wanting to see more. Am I the sort of person that actually can cope with this on my own? And the answer is, wow, it turns out, yeah, it is. And yeah, I am. And that's quite a cool thing to know about yourself. You know, it's quite a nice thing to know about yourself.
Absolutely.
It doesn't make me arrogant, far from it. It makes me the total opposite. In fact, I've learned to become a good host, much more of a better host and a better guest, which might sound like a strange thing, but people were such good hosts to me and knew so much about their own countries as I traveled through that it made me want to learn more about my own country so I could be a good host.
100%, yeah.
And also, you know, welcome, no matter how busy I was and no matter how frustrated I was or at the world at that particular point, I wanted to make sure my door was always open to people who were passing through.
Yeah. My wife...
Because
Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, because I felt I owed that to the world, because they gave me that, so
yeah. Paying it forward, aren't you? Because I'm the
yes,
same. It's
exactly.
Like if people message me to say, especially people that I've met on my trip, and they're like, oh, I'm going to Wales, or I'm going to be up in Scotland, or I'm getting into Dover, and I'm like, well, stay at mine. When you get in, spend first night, come and stay at mine. And we've already had a couple of people turning up at the door, and my wife's like, who is this that's staying? And I'm like, oh, I met them 8 years ago in such and such a place,
Yeah, and I've had one. I until a few months ago I was living in a caravan in my parents' garden. It's a pretty big garden, but still, it was like let's not sugarcoat it, and it was quite luxury for me. It was like, wow, I got a roof. It's brilliant. But I actually had somebody, and I'd said to so many people along the way, if you ever come to Wales, you knock on my door, kind of thing. And I've only actually had one couple do that from America, and it was so cool. And they were like, "We're coming." I'm thinking, shit, I haven't got room in my caravan. So I had to sort of knock on my parents' door and go, do you mind? And they're like, who are they? I said, I met them. I stayed with them for a night in America, and they were so good to me. And thankfully, my parents are very cool and were just like, yeah, no problem at all. So that was cool. I'd love it if more people did that, to be honest.
Yeah, definitely. Sorry, go on.
Yeah. And I was going to say the second part, the worst thing to come from that trip is, I guess what we were talking about earlier, I suppose, is the worst thing to come from the trip is the aches, the body aches. Oh God, the vibrations if you're going to do a big trip, check your vibrations. Just do what you can to reduce vibrations on your motorbike. Make sure your bum is secure and your hips are protected and your vibrations are as dampened as possible. Check the minute detail, because if you're going to be on a bike for a long time, for several years, it will get to you in some way or another. So, we're not young forever. Sorry about that. It's true.
See, I didn't notice. I mean, mine was about a year and a half, but I didn't notice. I mean, everyone goes on about comfort, and especially because I did it on the sports bike, but I didn't have any comfort issues. There's nothing that really jumped out at me that made me think, oh my God, this is unbearable. It's just like, well, it's a sports bike. You made the decision. Deal with it and
get on with it.
Yeah, and that was just it.
And that's the same with me. It's a single cylinder thumper, and it's narrow seat. And people would say to me, how are you coping on that narrow seat? I'm like, I don't have an issue with it because there's so much else going on. It didn't even occur to me that it was uncomfortable. And I, if it gets really uncomfortable, you stop, right? Yeah. So, and I had no issue. It was only when it hit me after about 3 years on, I guess.
Wow.
So I don't know, maybe 2.5 years or something. Suddenly everything broke down in my body. It felt like everything broke down. And I had said, I'm not even going to go start with a list of issues. But also I did crash as well and had a bit of a thud on my shoulder. And that felt like everything jerked and caused this chain reaction. But a lot of it was down to the vibrations over a prolonged period. And not stretching, not working it out of the body and just feeling like I was going to live forever and nothing really related to me. I was fine. I was young and going to live forever. And then suddenly it all hit me and it hit me hard. And now I just preach about it all the time to everybody. Do some yoga,
It is amazing, isn't it? The amount of people that talk about yoga and the benefits that it comes from. And when you listen to those people, you think, yeah, whatever. But until you actually start doing it, like we used to, believe it or not, in my old work within the old bill, it involved a lot of standing around wearing the heavy ballistic jackets, holding the weapons and stuff. And it used to crucify people's backs. Everybody.
Yeah, I can believe.
Everyone had compressed spine, everyone had bad backs, bad knees, flat feet, everything. So they started cottoning on to the fact that, maybe we should teach these lads and lassies maybe some back care exercises, some yoga. So they started teaching, imagine all these hairy arse coppers, like some of them are 45, 50 years of age, and they're getting taught yoga poses. They're like, fuck off. But once you started doing it, the amount of lads that were just like, This is actually pretty good. I can actually move my back again. So
yeah. And that's it. We seize up and we get repetitive strain injury. And it's amazing how many things we've taken from the things we used to take the piss out of when we were younger, but also things like the Japanese culture, you know, and that kind of stuff. They've been doing this for years, and they, you know, we're all going, what are these idiots doing?
There's a reason.
And there's a good bloody reason for that.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So flexibility, stretching. I mean, yes. You're either the type of person that will give it a go or you're not, and if you don't, you will regret it. So.
Sun cream and stretching. Look after your teeth. Look after your teeth, kids.
Splish, splash, splosh, stretch. Yeah.
That's it.
Right. Ray Holohan. Yeah, Ray Holohan. Hi, Steph. Congrats on your solo round the world achievement. Daily life has its ups and downs for everyone. I can only imagine the challenge of going round the world solo on a bike. Given the distance and time frame, do you mind sharing your most challenging times or situations, and how did you overcome them? I think we've touched a little bit of that, have we, or have we not?
I think there was a lot of ups and downs for sure, and that's the thing, isn't it? You know, and I think it's only sort of right to share the ups and the downs, isn't it? You know, because otherwise you're selling a false kind of, you know, falsehood, and I think when you get a real high, you do get a bit of a low afterwards, and you've got to deal with that. And also the thing that I think people underestimate is the fact that you can become saturated with all the information that's coming into your brain. If you're constantly moving, there's new information constantly, new smells, new sights, and you can get to the point where you're going, oh wow, another volcano, you know, like I can't take any more amazing shit, you know. Like South America was a prime example for me for that. I couldn't take any more in. I was just like, and I thought, well, this is a waste of time, isn't it? You know, so I had to make a decision at that point in lower end of South America, in Chile or Argentina. I was crisscrossing between the two. Like, what do? Do I rush home, or do I go and lock myself in a room and, you know, and just decompress for a while, you know, in a dark room with no view and no pamphlets and no Facebook of people telling me where I should go, or, oh my God, you missed what? You missed that? You didn't go there? And so... But I thought, well, I'm on a 250. How fast can I get home? Probably not the best decision to make. So I locked myself in a room for a week watching, you know, shit films and eating crisps and whatever else, and just recharging completely. So
I totally get that. You need that. You do need that. I find myself, I was writing for Fast Bikes magazine while I was away, plus doing the YouTube vids and stuff. So I would sort of, once a month, I would find a motel or a hostel or something, and I would literally just lock myself away for 4 or 5 days. I would write the piece for Fast Bikes, I would write my blog post for the website, and then I would edit the next episode, you know, that what's gone on the previous month. I would edit that, and I would basically just live in my room for 4 or 5 days. But towards the end, and it's funny you mentioned South America, because I started doing that in Chile, I would try and spend a day off the bike just exploring. You know, if I'm staying in if I'm in a city, I'll go and have a look and see what's going on, because and even now I look back and I think what a wasted opportunity South America was, because I was very much in the I've got to get to the States, you know, that was my focal point, and I bombed through South America and Central America, and I wish I'd spent longer there to explore it more.
Yeah, well, I mean, I spent a year in the end in South and Central America, but that seems like a really short space of time. There was so much to explore that, you know, I still don't feel like, oh, wow,
8
crikey.
weeks, something like that, yeah.
Wow.
It's crazy.
So, yeah, well, I mean, I still feel like there was a lot I missed, and I would love to go back there and to do it in that bite-sized chunk, because that's the thing about, you know, people think that around the world is the ultimate thing, and you know, I wouldn't change a thing, because it becomes a way of life rather than just a holiday. But Now, having done that and got that out of the way,
Yeah.
you know, in a sense, and got the T-shirt, several T-shirts. In fact, I'd like to do certain areas in like you said before, 2 or 3 months stints.
Yeah, definitely.
And so, oh God, that'd be so cool. Then you could really make the most because you know, by the time you got to, for example, South America, you're tired. You know, you're a bit worn out, and you're missing bits that you could have. You know, I think if you went back to a lot of the places that you went to, because you can so quickly form an opinion of somewhere from one glance, can't you? And we do. We go, I'm just using this as an example, but oh God, I hate Thailand. It's full of whatever. And you go back there a second time with a totally different mindset, and it's a completely different place.
Yep, totally.
You know. So I would love to do places where I was tired. I would love to go. I mean, Costa Rica is a prime example for me. Costa Rica is everything I love about life, in a sense, in one country.
Awesome.
It's got amazing wildlife. It's got tapirs. It's got sloths. It's got amazing, in the ocean, there's whales, there's dolphins. There's turtles. There's everything. It's got jungle. It's got sea. It's got gorgeous beaches. It's got everything. Dirt roads everywhere. And yet, when I got there, I was so drained that I was down, and the fact that I was in utopia and feeling down made me even worse. I was like, oh my God, I'm in the best place in the world and I'm feeling down. What hope is there for me? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. How long did you spend there?
Not long in the end. I did chill out for about a week and worked volunteered in a turtle, whatever you call it, like a charity where they basically collected eggs from the turtles, and then they incubated them and then set them free to stop the poachers taking them and stuff. And I went collecting eggs and all that kind of stuff. And it was a cool experience, but there was this sort of weird blanket. It felt like a heavy blanket over me at the same time.
Oh, wow.
And do you know what the thing that cheered me up was? When I got out of Costa Rica and I went into Guatemala. And I was still feeling a bit, oh God, you know, there's this malaise over me. And I stopped in a garage to have my chain tightened because I couldn't be asked doing it myself. And this old man, who must have been 80, over 80, I have no idea how old he was, and maybe his grandson. And I rolled in and I said, oh, chain you fix, you know, and the way that us English do explain things. And or Welsh in this case, and he said, "Oh no, come, you know, sit down, whatever." All sign language now, and he got his grandson to tighten the chain up and oil it for me and stuff, and he gave me his chair and he offered me some water, and then in the end, there's like, "Cuánto? How much? Cuánto?" And he said, "Oh." And he points, he's going, you basically saying, you and me, and he's rubbing his fingers together like you and me, and he takes my elbow and tries to lead me into the back room.
Oh, yeah.
This must be 85-year-old guy half my size, you know. I'm only 5'4", and he's trying to lead me into this back room as a payment. And I'm like, whoa, no, I pay you with cash if you don't mind.
Yeah.
And then he went, well, all right then, fair enough, you know.
Also, he charged me. He was actually.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I wasn't
boy.
misunderstanding the situation. It was all very clear. And basically he then said, okay, so the equivalent fee was £2.50, so which I gave him. And I was like, that was the only insult, really. I was like, wow, I was only worth £2.50. Was that it? Were you going to give me change if I'd have gone through the wrong option? But there was absolutely no offence taken on either side. It was all like, bye, all right then, fine, bye. Okay, money, you want to pay money? Okay, fine, that's fine. And we went, and I went off laughing and waving as I left. And it just simplified everything for me, that I just thought, you know, isn't that lovely? Just, this is why I travel. And it reminded me why I'm here, why I'm traveling, why, you know, because you meet it was such an honesty. There was such a beautiful honesty about it that I thought, this is why I'm here, not at home on the sofa complaining about the weather.
Could have been the love of your life, that, Steph. You never know. That 85-year-old bloke could have rocked your world. Changed your life.
I might go back after the lockdown. You never know. Stranger things have happened.
Right, last one of the patron questions. Andy Whitaker. Question to you both. If you had to go back in history and change the events of just one day, what day and events would it be? Ooh.
You first.
Wow. If you had to
Give me
go
time to think.
back in history and change the events of just one day. Whew. Cool, blimey.
Crikey, that's a tough one, isn't it?
Do you know...
Too many to choose.
Yeah, we've had this question crop up a couple of times before, and I'm trying to remember if I've ever said this before, but I listen to a lot of Joe Rogan. Do you ever listen to Joe Rogan
I do
podcast?
too. Yeah, I listen to him at bedtime sometimes.
And I remember somebody was on and the JFK assassinations came up and they were talking in depth about it. And I often think to myself, I wonder what America would be like if JFK hadn't been popped off. Because he had even for these days, he had some very liberal and radical views. And, you know, part of the reason I think he was hated so much in Dallas in Texas was because he was very much for equal rights and various other things which were just not of that time, really. And I do think to myself, I wonder what direction would the States have taken, and maybe even the world have taken, what impact would it have had if he'd carried on?
Yeah, that's a nice one.
Don't know.
I think for me, and I think we're kind of maybe going for two very obvious ones, and there's so many examples of the same kind of dictatorship. Oh, well, for you the opposite, but like dictatorship thing when around the world. But I'm going to choose the one that first springs to mind, and that's the birth of Hitler, or maybe the mistreating of Hitler when he was younger. He didn't, there were certain things that led him to become a monster, and otherwise he could have been a brilliant guy, and in some ways he was a brilliant man.
He was a master at what he did, wasn't he?
He was a master at what he did. And he was a drug addict as well. And he had a big concoction of drugs, of heroin, of cocaine, of, all the highs and uppers and downers. His own personal doctor injected him with all sorts every day. And if only they'd have the doctor maybe injected him with ecstasy instead.
I know, yeah.
And then history, would have really completely changed.
Oh, he just went on a great big doobie, yeah.
He just
mushrooms.
Smoked a joint instead. Then yeah. I mean, because I've recently just read Prisoner of Auschwitz.
All right.
Which is that what it's called? I can't remember now, but it's such a striking. I mean, it's a true story written so well about obviously about Auschwitz and being the tattooist of Auschwitz. That's it.
Right.
About the Jewish guy who was forced to become the tattooist who stamped them as they came in, basically, branded them as they came in, and obviously, I don't need to go on about the history of Hitler. We all know what he did, maybe if his doctor had just given him a spliff instead, if we could have changed that bit of history, we'd have been all right.
Yeah. Have you been to Auschwitz?
I haven't. I went over to Poland and I very nearly went over there, and I can't remember what happened as to why I didn't go. I really wanted to go there, but I at the same time was quite frightened of going there because it's such a harsh place to go. I don't want to forget about it. I want to take it on board, and I've read a lot about it and all that, and but at the same time, such an emotional place to go. I'm not sure I was kind of in the right place for that. So I was in two minds, because part of me thought, you go there and there's the guided tours and it's all tourists around it, and I just thought that this place shouldn't be a tourist. It shouldn't be a tourist attraction. But having done it, I'm really glad it is, because that is somewhere every single school kid on the planet should be taken there. Every kid should be taken there to see we shouldn't forget, should we? And I think that's the important thing. And I know exactly what you mean. It's that you're torn between not wanting to be sort of like rubbernecking in a way.
Yeah.
And at the same time, we need to remember these things,
Absolutely.
So,
I mean, we all know what happened there and what went on, but it's not until you go there that it actually becomes real, you know. And for me, it really struck home. It really hit home when we were on the guide was a Polish lassie, and her grandfather or great grandfather had been in Auschwitz and had been exterminated. In fact, I think most of her family had been exterminated in Auschwitz. And so she's obviously got she's Polish anyway, so she has an immense connection to the place, but she's actually got a family connection to it. So she was very emotional as she spoke about what went on here. And she was describing the parade square, and she said, you know, this is where they were brought 3 times a day, and they were counted, and if there wasn't enough, you know, the numbers didn't match up, they were told to stay there until they found out who was missing. And that could be literally like 6 hours, it could be all night until the following day, and then they're sent out without any food, they're sent out to work again. And there's a little guard box, a wooden guard box, and she was like, you see that guard box? Said that is because it could hit -20, -30 here in the winter, and it was too cold for the guards to stand and monitor all these people. So the guard was given a nice little warm box to stand in with his windows, and he basically stood and watched people freeze to death. And you just think, that, you know, that's just a person. That's just a person like you and I. What goes on in someone's head that makes you think that is okay to stand and watch that? People need to know what we've done to each other in the past.
They do need to know, but you know what? The desensitization is quite a powerful thing, and it's amazing what we can become used to as well. That person in the box at the same time, in another life, in another situation, wouldn't have been that monster.
No, you're right.
And I think that we're all capable, I mean, scarily, and this is all getting a bit dark, but we are all capable. And I think one thing that traveling does for us is reminds us and connects us. That's the healthy thing about travel, is that it connects us to people that we might see on the news, only ever see on the news otherwise, like refugees, for example. Mm-hmm. You know, I hear so many times, you know, only last night there was something on the news about that some refugees complaining about the situation that, you know, they're in an ex-military camp in Swansea, and they were complaining about the conditions. And, you know, I can hear people saying, oh, for God's sake, what they're complaining about. You know, that they've got at least they've got somewhere to sleep. And it's like, they haven't done anything wrong. And we all have a certain right to certain things. And the problem is, and you know, for example, you hear about terrorism all the time, and Muslim terrorists, you start connecting all Muslim terrorists, you know, all Muslims to terrorism. And so travel allows you to be in the home of that Muslim family, and seeing how warm and inviting and friendly they are, and how giving they are. And you see the other side, and you really start to have an empathy for your fellow human being, you know.
100%.
And I think that's what, and I think that's what these places like Auschwitz do. I think that's why it's important, as you said, to go and visit and to connect, and not to just wash away.
I think we now more than ever, and COVID only highlights this, is that we are just we're spoon fed whatever they want you to be fed, you know. And you just get bombarded from every direction, whatever the current thing is they want people to believe in, whatever they want people, how they want us to think. And I really noticed it in the old Bill, where I'd deal with an incident or a situation. I'm actually there, I'm dealing with it, and then I would go home and I'd watch it, or I'd be back in the canteen, like writing my notes about what's just happened, and it breaks on the news, and you're like, that's not what happened, that's utter bullshit. And then you realise, oh, hang on a minute, what I see up there from the BBC, from Sky, you can't trust that as fact. That ain't fact. That's whatever political persuasion or political persuasion has the most weight at that time. And as you say, when you travel, you see it for real. You know, like I've always been a little bit apprehensive about the whole Muslim faith, I've got to admit, because, you know, my job in London, you're worried about getting blown up all the time, and it's it's going to be Islamic fundamentalists. So the thought of going to a predominantly Islamic country, I'm like, oh God, what's going to happen here? Yeah. And as you said, one, you realise everyone's just like us, and two, 99.9% of people are actually how I would like to be. They're incredibly open, they're incredibly warm, they're incredibly friendly, giving, loving, and it really does open your eyes. Definitely. People have got to travel. See it with your own eyes.
Yeah. It's the only healthy way to go.
Absolutely. Yeah. Travel broadens the mind. There's a reason that's a saying, isn't it? It's true.
Yeah,
how are you for time?
absolutely.
Because we've been going for a couple of hours here. Are you okay for time?
I'm good. I'm good. Yeah.
Awesome. Right. What I'll do then.
I've still got my gin, so I'm all
Excellent.
right.
I've still got a little bit of beer left. We're all good. Normally I'll go to Instagram, but I tend to ignore the Patreon side of things because we never ever. The Facebook side of things, we never ever get to Facebook. So I'll pop across to Facebook and let's start with some of those questions. Right, so I'll just have to move screens around a little bit. Right, again, I've not read through these. I've not pre-read any, so I'll do it on the hoof.
I love it. Bring it on.
Where are we? Roll-off Roll-off Veldhuis.
Oh, Roll-off.
Do you know Roll-off?
I do. I think it must be the same Roll-off I know. Yeah.
Cool. Well,
he's a friend of my parents as well. He lives in Holland.
Oh, fantastic.
Hi, Roll-off. Hey.
Well, he's got some nice things to say about you. He says, if there's one person in the adventure motorcycle scene that I respect and admire, Steph must be that person. Courageous, resilient, and bounces back like a pro. Read her book, My Two Pennies Worth. You have a fan.
Oh, wow. Oh, how cool is that?
Chris Barnes asked, which were the best and worst moments of the trip and why? Well, I think we've covered that, haven't we?
Pretty much covered that, yeah.
Did we do the best? Did we do best?
Yeah, we talked about Antarctica. I suppose that was probably the best,
right
wasn't
at the start.
it? Yeah,
that's it.
Yeah.
Alan Foster says, I've trail rode with Steph. She's a fantastic woman. A trip around the world was amazing.
Oh, thanks, Alan.
Michael Dunn, amazing achievement. How many pistons did the CRF go through?
It didn't. I never opened the engine up at all.
Did you not?
Honest to God, no. It never. The only time the CRF broke down, I only had 4 punctures, actually, believe it or not, as well. But the only time it broke down was in Tanzania, 3/4 of the way home, and the starter really went, and that was it. That was it.
Your trip was 74,000 miles?
Yeah.
It's about the same as my one, that one, actually, yeah. Geez, and you didn't... Well, I didn't have any mechanical issues, but, mine was done in just over a year and a half, just under a year and a half. You're 4 years and you didn't have any...
Yeah, all right. My friend Danny the Leg, as I mentioned earlier, she pointed out that a unicyclist did it around the world quicker than me. But
no, I'm not having a dig. What I'm saying is, like, for 4 years, your bike held out for 4 years without having any major issues.
Yeah,
that's a great.
That's
advert.
pretty cool, isn't it?
Yeah, God.
But do you know what? As well, do you know what? The one thing I hadn't thought of as well, talking about logistically, you take a brand new bike, and it was a brand new bike. I put 500 miles on it, and then I left.
I'd walk that.
Just to break it in. And then I. Then you leave and you come back to the UK and it's over 3 years old. So now it needs an MOT, and it needs taxing and you can't, and it needs insuring because to get back into the UK, because of course each border you get your insurance at the border and a third party and whatever. And then you suddenly, or into Europe really, you get back to Europe and you need the insurance, you need the MOT. How do you get an MOT without being in the country?
That's a good point. I don't know how I got around that. I think my bike was still just under 3 years, so I was okay. How did you do it?
Yeah. Well, I'm talking I'm not telling you.
I spent a couple of £1,000 on my carnet, the carnet de passage. I was one of the last to get the original sort of style carnets before they moved to the new system that they were taking on. So I think my carnet was about 2,700 quid I spent. And I kept meeting all these travellers that were just travelling on forged carnets, and they were just like, no one pays for a carnet anymore. You just forge it, Photoshop it. And I was like, how does that work? How's that? I couldn't imagine how I would, like, Australia are really tight on it, aren't they? And I thought, I'd get thrown in the clink if I turned up with a forged carnet there. But
you know, at the same time, you get to so many borders and they say to you, and you have to walk them through it. And you think, surely you've had other people here before me. Like, I'm not the first person to come through with a foreign vehicle. And you still have to walk. And they say, oh, no, you're fine. Just go. And I'm, no, you really need to stamp this. And they're like, stamp it where? Where do I stamp it? Yeah. And you're like, no, please just stamp it here. Yeah. I'll fill it in. You stamp it here. You know, so it's amazing what you actually could get away with. This is before my round the world trip, but I used to do tours in Morocco, and we winged it. I mean, this was in the early days of setting up the off-road school, and Honda had given us all these motorbikes, so they were actually owned by Honda, but obviously, you know, they gave them to us to run the off-road school. And when we said we wanted to do a Morocco trip, we said, can we have the paperwork to get through the border? And they said, oh no, we're not giving you the paperwork. We'll give you photocopies of the paperwork. And of course, when you get to the border in Morocco, and they say we need the original paperwork, and I've got a pink file full of copies, and a load of motorbikes stuffed in the back of a truck, and they say, these not original, these photocopies, and I'm like, oh no, these laser copies. You know, like, what the fuck does that mean? Yes, you know, these laser copies, not any photocopy, these laser copies. Oh, okay. And they're like, oh, yeah, they're like, oh, okay. Yeah. And then they sort of signed everything and looked at me and went, you trouble. You know?
10 out of 10 for effort. There you are. In you go. How did you?
So it is amazing what you can get away with.
How'd you find Morocco? I loved it. I love that place.
I love Morocco. Yeah. I would love to go back and do actually hope to do some tours there again soon, because you know, we did our first off-road tour there with paying customers, but we chose some customers who were like up for it. Like they were a bunch of Geordie mates, and we said, look, you know, you just cover your own costs basically, and you know, maybe a tiny bit more to help us do the recce. And this is a recce, so this is going to be a proper adventure. And our first trip in 2010 was very much the proper adventure. It was you know, I'd kind of worked the route out from Google Earth, and it looks like there's a bit of a track through those dunes. That'll do. And we went for it. And that's again where my old business partner kind of, back to the beginning here, where he really sort of just said, yeah, let's go for it, whatever. And so between us, we sort of winged it, and we had the best adventure ever. And then we did a few more, a bit more organised, but the first trip was the best. Yeah. But I love Morocco again, just for friendly people, great culture, not too far from home.
Absolutely
beautiful place.
It's a nice taste of adventure. If you've never been outside of Europe or the Western world, it's a nice taste of adventure, isn't it? And
it's wonderful. As long as you like tagine, that's the thing.
And you're not worried about what you eat. Just whatever's in it, eat it. Yeah. The amount of people, when I've taken people there and they've gone, what's in it? And I'm like, just don't ask. Just, do you want meat or veg? Which one?
We actually had nothing, but they used to say to you, what would you like to eat? And we'd say, well, what have you got? And they'd say tagine, and we're like, okay, well, I'll have tagine. Yeah. And then at the end, the first trip we got back to Fez, and we said, look, to our customers, because we were totally irresponsible at that point. We were just like, okay, let's have a race into the centre of Fez, into McDonald's. And this was our last night of the tour. So everybody raced into the middle of McDonald's. The guy he's my ex-brother-in-law, he used to be married to my sister. He worked for me as well at the time, and he ended up crashing, breaking his leg. And but we got to McDonald's, and I've never had such an amazing meal in my life. I had 2 Big Mac meals in my it was an awesome trip. I loved that trip.
I loved about Morocco is, you know, it's a Muslim country, it's a dry country, isn't it? But they have their own beer. They've got a Moroccan beer, and you'd say to them, can I have a beer? And they're like, oh, no beer. And then someone else would say, any chance we could have a beer? You know, once they know you a little bit, can we get a beer? And they're like, we'll get you a beer. And then they come back, they arrive with a big crate of beers for you, and you're like, happy days.
There was a guy who became a friend of mine there because we went quite a few times, and there was a guy called Riz, and he said he used to have a beer with us, at the end of the night. I said, Riz, I thought you were like a good Muslim boy, and he was just like, 5 days for Allah, 2 days for me, I like that.
Nice,
I like that.
Definitely.
Good on you.
Yeah, it's good. I can't wait to go back. Definitely, I'll go back.
Yeah.
Right, Tyler JC Murphy, what's the overall cost of a trip like this, and where would someone start with planning, funding, etc.? Good question. Get asked that all the time.
I mean,
4 years on the road.
Depends on. Yeah, I mean, cost depends on how long you're on the road and how you're going to do it. It can cost you 100 grand or it can cost you 20 grand. For me, it cost about, and I'm not entirely sure because I didn't keep a spreadsheet. And I did get asked once for a spreadsheet on all my costings for the trip.
Wow.
And I went, yeah, no. But I've vaguely tried to work it out because I do get asked this a lot. And I think it probably cost me about 30 grand for 4 years.
Wow.
And what do you mean, wow, good or bad?
I was just under 55 grand for a year and a half.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah. That's everything. Absolute. The bike, all my visas, all my meds, fuel, accommodation, food, shipping, covering my tenants in my flat. It didn't work out for about 3 months, so I had to cover mortgage for 3 months, maintenance for my son, everything while I was away. Just under 55 grand.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I didn't have any maintenance for starters, but I mean, I only roughly worked it out, but I think it was only about 30 grand. But I mean, the bike was given to me for starters. A lot of my equipment was given to me, so in that sense, but living on the road for 4 years was about 30, 35, I would say. But that just goes to show, doesn't it? You can spend
absolutely
a shitload. And I've got to say as well, there were times where I had such good fortune, like, for example, when I was about to go through from North America to Africa. Now, the shipping was going to cost me a fortune. And when I say a fortune, I mean a couple of grand. And through a chance meeting of someone in a garage in the prairies in Canada, who then posted a video of me on Facebook, which I didn't even know he'd posted. Somebody else then got in touch with me, having seen the video, who then had a friend who owned a shipping company, who then shipped my bike for free to Africa.
Wow.
So it can be totally by chance as to how much money you spend sometimes. But obviously living in your tent saves you a lot of money. Yep. And living on street food and tins of tuna and Laughing Cow cheese, obviously, then you can save yourself a lot of money. And I think that the longer you go, the better you get at saving money, of course, as well.
Definitely. And what about planning and working out funding? That's something I get asked all the time, is like, where do you start planning a trip, like a round the world trip, your dream trip?
I don't know what you did, but I basically I'm a big lover of spreadsheets, actually, and I did have my spreadsheet, and I although you'd find it hard to believe, I'm sure, but because I look like chaos, but actually, but I love my little spreadsheets that automatically calculate things for you, and I put my little headings on with bold, and then I put daily budget for food, but they weren't really based on anything. They weren't based on any real knowledge. It was just like, well, probably a $5 a day for food, a $10 a day for fuel, and I guess it didn't work out at all, really. It's just that you adapt as you go, So, but it makes you feel better. It gives you the bit of, your spreadsheet gives you a bit of confidence. So,
how long did you spend planning your trip before you actually went then?
Well, I started planning, and I'd said, right, I'm going to leave in 3 years' time, and same. I started planning, and I had my sort of, my thing on the wall, my map on the wall, and with the wipeable map, so you could adjust and whatever. And my housemate at the time, my lodger, used to laugh at me every day when he'd come home from work. He'd look at my map and go, "Oh God, look at you, still bloody planning. Oh, you've moved it a bit today or whatever." But really, and then I brought it forward because the circumstances changing, and I brought it forward, and so it was probably about a year of playing around with it, and really very little of it was accurate once I got going, and I think that's the thing. And it's very easy just to tell people, just go, just do it, just, you know, and of course it's not that easy. We've all got to find a little bit of a comfort zone before we take that jump, haven't we?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I get asked all the time about that, and I've actually Tyler, I'll plug my turn to plug. I've done a video on how to work out your budget, and there's some cracking websites out there, which, as long as they're up to date, as long as the websites are kept up to date, they give you a rough idea. You know, they've got 3 different levels of travel. There is the camping in the tent, there is the hostel, and then there's the hotel option, and they give you a rough...
Oh, really?
Yeah, and for every country in the world almost, they give you an idea as to how much you should expect to pay for your accommodation at those 3 levels every night, how much fuel is, a tank of fuel roughly, what the cost of your basic, your daily food. And again, they break food down to, can you survive on 1 meal a day, or are you 3 square meals with pudding and you want booze? You know, it's all that sort of stuff. So there's some really good in-depth websites out there now. Yeah. But I've done a video that basically lays out the basics, and as we've already discussed, it really does depend on what sort of traveller you are and how you travel at the time, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
But you were saying 3 years. I did the same. I just sort of picked 3 years, and I look back and you don't need 3 years to plan. I would, if I was to go again, if I had the option to go again, so I'm not tied down with family, financially I could do it. I think I would literally get up tomorrow morning, I would have my credit card, my passport in my jacket, a rucksack, jump on a bike, and I'd be perfectly happy to just go, just hit the road and go.
Yes, but that's because you've been there and you've done it.
Absolutely.
And so, you know, and that's the thing, it's all very well for us to say, just go and do it, and but we all need a little bit of some knowledge to take with us for that security, don't we? And you know, I think there's nothing wrong with that, you know. I mean, I can remember, I listened to some of your Ben King pod when you had Ben on not so long back, and I listened to that, and it was making me giggle because Ben contacted me before he left on his trip and was just like, "Can I ask you some questions?" I was like, "Yeah, of course you can. Fire away." I said, "Ask as many questions as you like." God damn, did he ask some questions? His list of questions never ended. I love that guy. I love that guy's energy. And in the end, what happened? You know, he was planning and asking a million questions. In the end, what happened? He got, you know, his whole plans changed as he went because he was having such a good time. You know, and I'm not knocking him for that because he planned to be the youngest guide or whatever and go around the world. But in the end, it became far more about the actual journey than his any goal or whatever. And you know, I love that guy. He's so lovely. He really is. Just, I wish I had half his energy.
Absolutely. He is just a fantastic person, isn't he? You know, the guy is just salt of the earth.
Well, what we were saying earlier about, you know, how what you put out comes back to you, sort of thing, and he is just a prime example of that. You know, you feel that little bit younger when you're around him. You know, you've got a little bit more energy. Definitely. You're a bit more sprightly when you're around him. He's a lovely guy, and I love the fact that he only made it to Pakistan. Oh, I say only, you know what I mean? You know, he didn't make it around the world yet. He might still do, but who cares? You know, he's having a great time. Life is too short to be stuck to agendas or whatever, really. But yeah, he was one that asked so many questions. So it is true in that sense that don't worry about it, just go for it. But at the same time, it's not the best advice to give people because we need a little bit of cushioning to get us going in the first place.
Yeah, definitely. I think everyone always sets a date in the future, and that might be for practical reasons. There might be things that are going to prevent you going until that date, but it's also nice to have that little comfort zone, isn't it? Just that's a year away, that's 2 years away, I can take my time and take my time.
Yeah. But then setting a date is also a good thing in the sense that it makes it real, doesn't it? Yeah, so, you know, you can bring it forward or whatever, but setting a date does make it real. So whatever it takes, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know?
I've said before, like, one of the hardest parts of my entire trip was that morning when I left from the Cenotaph in London. So it's like Big Ben bongs for 9 o'clock. And it's like, right, that's the time I said I would leave. 9 o'clock or 9:30, whenever it was. I'm leaving from the cenotaph at that time. And I'm there, and there's a load of people to see me off, and all my friends and family are there. And it was just like, I don't want to go. I don't want to go.
Yeah.
Shit, I've got to do this now.
It sounds like we had exactly the same experience. That was the thing. Terrifying, isn't it? Shit, I told everybody.
I know. Like I had a full police escort. Like all my mates from the diplomatic lot, you know, all the bikers that ride the diplomatic motorbikes, they were all there and a whole load of traffic from the Met. They were there to escort us out of London. And there was like 30 or 40 people turned up on their bikes, and it was a big massive cavalcade. We left the cenotaph, and by the time we got to Elephant and Castle, I needed fuel because I hadn't filled up with fuel. So I had to pull into a petrol station with like 50, 60 different bikes there, police cars with the blue lights on as well, and I had to get fuel. And then by the time we got out of London, it's like, we're really late for the ferry now, so I had to overtake. It's peeing down with rain, and I had to overtake Ollie Old Bill and just go, right, I've got to go. Tanking it down the A2.
Oh, that's brilliant. Well, I had an escort out of London as well, with a few sort of random bikers that I didn't know, and my friend Pete Bog, that's his nickname, Bog. The Bog bit is another story. But Pete Bog escorting me out, and if he hadn't escorted me out the Ace Cafe, I wouldn't have had a clue where I was going.
Oh, no.
I was shitting myself. I didn't know which direction to go, and I was like, Pete, where's Pete? Just follow Pete, UK. But then on the way back in, I had a police escort coming home in 2018, and that was from my little cousin, who's now 6'7" or something, who's a Met officer, or whatever you call it. He's a police biker in London, whatever you call it, and just like his dad was, and he collected us basically, and my mum and dad were riding with me. They'd come to France to meet me and a few friends and stuff, and then my copper cousin, little cousin, came to meet us and ride us in, and that was so cool, because it was just like, wow, the last time I was escorted by police didn't end well for me. It's so cool, and it was just such a full circle thing. But also riding down, the motorway, and people looking at me.
Yeah, like
cars slowing down, seeing the policeman,
What's
for starters, going, oh, slow down, what speed am I doing? But also going, who is this woman? And I'm just like, God, I love this.
Awesome. How did you navigate on your trip?
Oh, well, I did a bit of everything really. So I used the GPS a lot. I'm not, my sense of direction is absolutely terrible. So if I come out of a high street store, as an example, I can turn the way, go halfway back down the way I came and go, hang on a minute, I've been into this shop before. My sense, people, if I had £1 for every time somebody said to me, how did you get around the world again?
I get that,
so my sense of direction isn't great, but I can map read, and so I do, and I like maps. But I also like technology, and so I have a bit of a mix of the two. I'm not one of these, it's not the same unless you're using paper maps. That kind of annoys me a little bit. It's just like, it's not a proper adventure unless. It's like, fuck off.
Exactly.
There's no such thing. There's just like, there's no ultimate, right or wrong. There isn't a right or wrong. You do it you can have an adventure in your backyard, as I said before. So I guess I did a mixture of the two, and sometimes nothing at all,
Literally, just by the old, I'd often do it in that. For whatever reason, if a couple of times my sat nav just shat itself, so it won't switch on, and you're just like, and you literally do just look at the sun. It's like, is it morning? Is the sun? What way is the sun? So you just think sun rises in the east, sets in the west. Well, me, I'll head east. Keep going that way.
Well, like South America is dead easy, isn't it? It's very narrow.
Yeah.
There's
the
wet north
bit?
and the south.
Yeah, definitely. Right, next one. Tim Ord. Did Steph feel vulnerable being a woman solo? And also, did you or I feel the media gives certain countries a particular bad rep in relation to how you perceived them on your trip? Well, I think that second part we've discussed. Yeah, the media's got a lot to answer for. Can do some good, but it's done a lot of bad.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And as far as being a woman, you know, and I've said it before, I've never done it as a guy, so I can't really sort of tell you, like, from the perspective of a woman. I don't know if it's any different to the perspective of a guy, really. But I do know that as a woman, when we're throughout our life, we do have these sort of subliminal messaging, if not blatant messaging, about be careful, you're a woman. In fact, it wasn't subliminal at all before I left and during the trip. But a lot of people say, oh, but you're a woman. You know, I'm like, Jesus, ram it down my throat, why don't you? Like, you know, you're going to get raped and murdered. And I mean, that was literally said to me. And particularly in places like South Africa, for example, like, oh, you know, you're going to get raped and murdered crossing Africa. And I'm like, well, I have been all the way around the world so far. Like, you know, and they're like, yeah, but this is Africa, TIA, this is Africa. And I'm like, God damn, if I hear that one more time. And I'm like, well, have you been anywhere beyond your neighborhood?
Exactly.
You know, and they're like, oh no. And it's just like, well, so people presume it's going to be harder as a woman. I think in some cases it's easier because, you know, you can get to a border and you've lost your paperwork, and the angry official is kind of, it melts after a while because he's like, well, fair, because I don't mean it's like a sexual thing. I mean, they tend to get sort of like fatherly around you. Yeah. People want to protect you as a woman, and in some cases it's a lot easier. And I'm totally happy to admit that some cases it's easier as a woman. But in some cases, yeah, I suppose it is riskier. I did have a few dodgy situations with guys who could have, definitely could have, you know, they were a lot stronger than me and could have sort of whatever, but they didn't. And I think a lot of that is, again, down to attitude or luck or whatever you want to say. But as far as feeling vulnerable, I think we all feel vulnerable from time to time. And I think you just got to not dwell on it and deal with each situation as it comes. And most of the time I didn't feel vulnerable. I felt welcomed. And even in countries where people were sort of saying, oh, be careful here as a woman, don't admit that you're a single woman, they won't understand you. I kind of wanted to say, no, I'm single. I mean, stupidly, I guess, in some sense. I didn't want to say my husband's on his way. I wanted to say, yeah, no, I'm married to my motorbike. I'm a single woman and I'm free and I'm proud, you know. And the response was amazing. People are like, yeah, you know, you go, girl, you go for it. And we're right behind you, even in the countries where you would expect that old-fashioned view of, but you should be married and you should be at home. And so I think unless you're honest and open and allow yourself to that vulnerability, you can never really understand people.
Yeah, know? Absolutely. And I think, you know, what you're saying about the occasions there where blokes that you've met who could have quite easily overpowered and done whatever, and they didn't. Well, I mean, that let's not pull any punches here. That can happen here. That can happen in this country. That can happen in the West. You know, it's just part of life, isn't it?
Exactly. I've had worse in Wales. I've had more threatening situations in Wales. And honestly, I have. You know,
I've been in a nightclub in Wales. I was in a nightclub in Carnarvon, and I tell you, I felt a bit nervous.
Oh, Carnarvon. Yeah, now you're talking. Yeah, you know, because I kind of grew up. It's about 16. I was in nightclubs in Carnarvon, so I
sort of Wild West.
Maybe that's why I wasn't so fearful.
Yeah. No, you're totally right in what you say. You know, it's what you got to take people as you find them, haven't they? And whilst you need to be streetwise about things, you have to have a certain amount of an open mind and just that ability to see for yourself, try things for yourself.
It's a fine line, and you know, absolutely, it's a fine line, and it's very difficult to know where to draw the line. And I think if looking back, I mean, if I'd have told people the chances I took along the way as they were happening, people would have been appalled and terrified and like wanting to go send in the helicopters, I suppose. But they worked out well, and I don't know if that's luck or good judgment or a bit of both, or the fact that generally, as we said, people are good, and it's only those small percentage, and you know, The bad stuff makes the news because
it is fairly rare, isn't it? You know, that's the view I take, is that the stuff you read about in the news, these horrific things, it's not an everyday occurrence. You know, it's not something that everybody faces on a day-to-day basis. It's even here in this country, it's fairly rare. You know,
yeah.
So,
well, exactly. You have a 1,000 people go through unharmed through one area unharmed, and the one person that gets harmed. Of course, that's the only bit that makes the news.
Aye,
so,
absolutely.
Of course it is, because the rest isn't news, is it?
No,
so.
Exactly, yeah. Carl Burridge, question for both of you. Was there ever a point during your respective trips where you thought, that's it, I've had enough, I can't carry on? And if so, what triggered that thought?
I didn't really have that's it, I can't carry on, but I had very close to, I think you have to assess every now and again as to why you're doing it and is it still worth it? And you have to ask yourself those questions, because if you don't, then, you know, I've met a lot of people on the road who have said, oh, I've failed. I planned to do this and I've only been on the road 3 months and I've failed because I'm not enjoying myself and I'm going home. And I'm like, hey, if you're not enjoying yourself, why are you doing it?
Yeah.
Go home. That's not failure. That's just accepting you tried something, you didn't like it. That's not failure. No. I never trust anyone who's never failed at anything or who's never admits to anything like that. I think, you know, you've got to try things and be open to trying things, and it doesn't matter if you don't like it. You move on to the next thing.
Absolutely.
You know. So,
yeah.
And so, yeah, I had quite a few occasions where I had to stop and say to myself, "Is this still right for you? Is this what you want to be doing? Is it worth it?" And often, the answer, you know, well, obviously, the answer eventually was, yeah, keep going, you know, or work through it. But I think that if I was to do it again, I would really like to try and do it without an agenda. And I say that because I had an agenda, which was I wanted to do all 7 continents. I wanted to get around the world. And I have a friend who I met before we left, and then I met him again on the road, who said, you know, his whole journey was about no agenda sort of thing, you know, no destination sort of thing, you know, whatever. And I go where I go and I get where I get. And I think I would kind of like to try it like that. Although I think a lot of the things that got me through the hard times was having that goal. So that sort of kept me going through those little bit of rough patches sort of thing, you know? So it's a tough one, really. I think I'd probably just, after a few months, go, do you know what, that'll do.
Yeah, back to my house, back to my sofa. Yeah. For me, it's well documented. I spoke about it loads in a lot of these podcasts. The lowest point for me was Mauritania, when I made the decision to come back. It was bad at the time, before I made the decision to come back, hence why I made the decision. But being home for a couple of months was the worst. That was the lowest point. Just that feeling of a failure, and then going.
Yeah, there you go.
Going again. Yeah. It never crossed my mind from the second I left on the second attempt. It never crossed my mind to give up. It was just the only way I was finishing that. Well, there's 2 ways. I was either going to finish the trip, or I was going to come back in a box. So it was like, we're doing it. So, you know, it's happening.
So you had that goal and you had that mission, and it probably helped you through. Again, the same with me, isn't it? It's like, I think a lot of people have this idea of this romantic vision of, well, I'm just going to be, you know, this sort of hippie vision of just travel aimlessly and everything's going to be wonderful and romantic. And like you said earlier on about some people sort of make out like everything's good and happy, and actually they're almost lost souls in a way. And I'm not saying everybody. I'm just you know, it's just that thing of that romantic vision isn't always what it's cracked up to be. You know, and so a goal can really help you through those tough times, because there will be tough times.
Absolutely.
Just like there is at home. You know, it's life. That's life. And so sometimes that mission can really help you through.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you've nailed that there. That is life. Life is ups, life is downs, life is good times, life is amazing times, life is horrific and desperate times. That is life, isn't it? And no matter where you are, you will face that at some point in your life.
Yeah. And I think some of us find ourselves in more ups and downs because we kind of push harder for that feeling life, for that, we'll never not have the lows because we're aiming for the highs, and of course you're going to stumble and we're not going to be happy being comfortable all our lives. We're not.
Well,
There are times there are times you wish for it, and there are times, but we're always pushing. We're always pushing, and there's nothing wrong with that. But you have to accept that there'll be downs as well.
Absolutely, definitely, yeah. Next was Shane Jaspritza. How you doing, Shane? I met Shane in Australia. Top bloke. Came for a bit of a ride with me, and where were we? From Melbourne to Canberra, I think. We did Shane and a load of lads took me on this amazing ride through the mountains. It's awesome. But anyway, Steph.
I know a Shane from Australia as well, and he took me for a ride for quite some time. Probably a different kind of ride. But I don't think it was a different surname.
Might not be. Shane, you're some man. Steph, what was the first thing you left behind after your trip started from all the things you packed because you thought you needed it but you didn't? And what was the first thing you had to buy that you didn't pack? So first thing that you thought, this is useless, I'm never going to use, I'll dump it. And the first thing that you thought, shit, I should have brought that, and you had to go and buy it.
Oh, okay. Well, okay. So the first thing I dumped was probably the spot tracker.
Was it?
Yeah, and actually somebody bought me that, and I did. I'm sorry, I dumped it because it was really annoying, and also if you weren't reporting in every night, people were worrying about you, and it's just like, Jesus, it's best they don't know anything. And also it also had like one of those things on it that was, that was on the tracker on the bike that had like if you went over a certain angle.
All right.
Like it reported in to someone. It's like, Jesus Christ, I'm in sand today. Expect many reports.
Lots of this.
Oh, Steph's at 30-degree angle. It's like, Jesus. But so the spot tracker I got rid of. I got sick of it, and I didn't want people. I wanted an element of security, I suppose, but at the same time, in an emergency, it's a great thing to be able to press a button and say, hey, come and get me, I'm stuck or I'm lost or whatever. But at the same time, 99% of the time you don't need that, and it causes more trouble than it's worth. So I dumped that. The thing that I bought, what was the next thing? The thing that I bought while I still was on the road.
Yeah, the thing that you had to buy because you thought, ooh, I didn't bring that.
Oh, well, the thing that I got made probably, so my bike doesn't have a center stand. And so initially I had a top box on the back of the bike, so it's sort of quite a heavy top box on the back of the bike that I used as a center stand whenever I got a puncture. So I'd just sort of shimmy the bike onto the top box, and then I could change the tire. But then I got rid of the top box and had soft luggage, which doesn't quite work as well as a center stand. So somebody gave me as a gift, and then I lost it and got one made, a replica made, which is like it's like a metal tube that's extendable with a little prong fork on the end, and you can just basically push your bike up onto its side. And and it worked a treat, and it just gets the wheel off the ground. So a rock would do the same, or a branch would do the same. But if you're in a desert and you haven't got any of those things, then this was a perfect thing, and it was so light and easy to pack that was a cool thing.
Nice. There's a mate,
and I still use them on the trails in Wales. I still use it trail riding in Wales.
There's a mate of mine who's come on a couple of Spanish trips with me, and he always has. It's a twig. It's a stick that he wraps in a little baggie, and that's basically so that he can do exactly what you just said. When he gets to the hotel at night, he pushes the bike over onto its side stand, whacks the stick under the swing arm to lift the back wheel up, and you can, he's just got it down to a T. Everyone
Simple.
laughs, and by like day 3, people are like, "Can I borrow your stick?"
Actually, can I borrow that?
It's great. For me, I had a spot tracker on mine, but I used it literally to track my route. I've got a mate of mine, Ian Gloyd was his nickname at uni, but he's a proper techie. He's a techie genius, and he hacked the spot tracker at the time so that it could constantly plot my route onto a Google map. So it wasn't just the day that's just gone. It would plot my entire journey from when I first activated it to when I finished. So it plotted my whole trip. So that's part of the reason I had it with me. Plus, from a family, I could just hit that button and it posted to Facebook to say I'm safe, I'm here, that sort of thing.
Yeah. No, brilliant. And I actually did have something similar on my bike, which was it's called Bike Track.
Oh, right.
And basically it was fitted onto my bike. It's a anti-theft device, basically. So, or if your bike gets nicked, they can hone in on your bike and you can basically track your bike to wherever it was nicked, wherever it was taken, which is a brilliant thing. But this also did the same thing. It tracked all the way. So at the end of my trip, I had a record of where I'd been. So
nice.
That
Awesome.
was pretty cool.
Awesome. Yeah, I took a whole load of camping kit with me because I had that romantic thought that I would be setting up camp at night and getting a fire going and making myself a coffee and some food in front of the fire. I never did that once. So by the time I was always too knackered. Like, I would set camp up at night. I'd literally put my tent up, get in, fall asleep, wake up in the morning, take the tent down and start riding again. So I'd just eat during the day. So halfway across Russia, I'd snapped my frame, I think the 3rd time, and I just thought, I don't need all this. So I ditched all my camping kit, bar sleeping bag and a tent, just ditched it all in the middle of Russia. And then I had to buy, when I got to Canada, I had to buy some handlebar muffs because it was minus 38 and my heated grips had given up and I didn't have any winter gloves. Geez. So I was just like, right, so I got handlebar muffs from a ski shop in Calgary, I think it was. Like Skidoo handlebar muffs. And that's what I had to buy. That was it.
I did. I mean, crikey, minus 38 riding. That is horrible. Yeah. I went up to Tuktoyaktuk on the ice roads, but I took a truck to Tuktoyaktuk. I left the bike in BC. Oh God, it was so cold. I slept on the roof. I did camp in minus 30 odd, minus 35 or something. But yeah, then I had a warm truck to get into afterwards. So God's sake, that is cold. Isn't it?
I mean, that's with wind chill. That wasn't like stop and that's your temp. That's your temp. I think it was like minus. I don't know what it was, minus something. But anyway.
Cold. It was cold.
It was cold. But you could literally ride for about 10 minutes and then you'd have to stop.
Yeah.
And I was putting my bare hands on the exhaust and I would smell them cooking before
the pain.
The chilblains when they kick in. Oh,
yeah.
Horrible. Right, we are nearly 3 hours that we've been at this.
Oh my God, really? Wow. I need another G&T.
I think we'll pick one more question and then that'll do us. And if I mean, there's loads of questions, so maybe we look at doing a part 2 later in the year if you're up for that.
That sounds great.
Beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Lovely. Right, we'll go for the last question then. Alan Dupree. If Steph and Bruce had 1 month off work, which section or part of the trip would you repeat if you could fly in, rent a bike on a one-way rental, and why? So 1 month, where would you go back to?
Oh my God, a month to go back. Oh God, Ethiopia.
Wow, yeah?
Yeah, I absolutely loved Ethiopia. It's such a cool country. It is so beautiful. And again, it's about sort of where your mindset is at the time and maybe, and I know I met a lot of travelers through Ethiopia. And so the circumstances at the time were that I ended up in a convoy for some of it. And then meeting up at different points and separating and meeting up with like a German guy in a big green hippie bus and a French guy in a little French bus and then I had some Americans in a long wheelbase Land Rover and all these different people and then me on the bike. Oh, there was a Canadian couple and an old Canadian couple. Sorry. No, I shouldn't say an old Canadian, an older, mature couple in a converted ambulance, sort of Land Rover ambulance thing. And we were like just like the wacky races going through Ethiopia, and then separating and meeting up again, and we had such an amazing time. And I think I probably had the best time on two wheels. And in some parts of Africa, you wished you were in a 4x4. But Ethiopia is so cool for a motorbike. Like, you go up into the mountains, and you've got this stunning roads, and then a bit of dirt, and then a bit of beautiful, paved Chinese roads and all that. And the people are amazing. And okay, you do get a lot. It's tiring. And I know a lot of the people that I traveled with were saying, I'm exhausted, because you have to keep saying no to people because people are always asking you for money. You get people throwing stones at you occasionally. You get all these different things. There's a lot of attack on the senses. And then there's no cool milkshake and warm bed at the end of the day, because often the toilets are disgusting, or there's definitely no milkshake, or there's no hot shower or cold shower even. There's no water at all, or no electricity, whatever. But for some reason, it just ticked all the boxes for me. I absolutely loved it. I learned to stop saying no and finding something else to stay instead of saying no, just so that negativity thing wasn't kind of going on, and having a giggle instead. And the scenery is stunning. It's completely not what you expect. I think we still have Ethiopia in our minds from the 80s of Feed the World, true. and of course that was just a small piece of their history, and of course there's still, we've got civil war, I think, going on there right now as we speak. There's always something going on, but it's not what you think, Ethiopia, potentially what you might think. And I absolutely loved it. So I would love to go back to Ethiopia, spend more time there.
Mega. I've heard so many things about all the various different countries in Africa, and it's definitely somewhere I've not been yet, but somewhere I want to go back to. Of course, so many. Japan. Yeah. I loved Japan. I would love...
I've never been I'd love to go to Japan.
Amazing place. Just everything about the place I loved. The people, the culture, the history, just the sight and sound and smell of the place. Just loved it. Absolutely loved it. I would also like to spend longer in some of the South and Central American countries, because I didn't do them justice. I would love to go back, and I'd love to spend longer in Chile, longer in Peru, longer in Colombia, Ecuador, all those sort of places. Even play like Mexico. I've made some good friends in Mexico that
I loved Mexico.
Went back there on a honeymoon and met up with a couple of lads that I'd met on my trip. It was awesome.
How cool!
So there's so many places.
How nice to go back and share it with someone that you love as well. That's really nice.
Definitely. God, so many. You can't just pick one, can you? There's so many. It's
like choosing a child, isn't it?
Awesome. Well, Steph, thank you so much for taking such a chunk out your evening and having a chat. It's been an absolute pleasure.
It's been a real pleasure, and I'm looking forward to the next time we catch up around the campfire with a beer.
Absolutely, yeah. Bring on those days. It feels like a lifetime ago now, doesn't it? But
I can't wait.
They'll be back. They'll be back. Before I round it up, this is your opportunity. Plug whatever you want. Say whatever you want. Over to you.
Okay, well, obviously, it's got to be my book, Home by 7.
Where is that available?
It's available on my website, stephjeavons.com, and also on Amazon. And watch this space as well. I've got a new kind of brand, kind of rebranding what I'm already doing, which is motorbike events and that kind of thing. But that's all coming out, ready for when we can join together as a group of friends again. And so that's what I'm busy planning at the moment. But in the meantime, read the book.
Awesome. So if people want to follow you and keep up to date with what's going on in your world, what's the best place for them to head to? The website or social media or what?
Oh, I guess probably social media is probably the best one these days, isn't it? So yeah, Steph Jeavons, obviously on Facebook, and it's just at Steph Jeavons on Instagram as well. Yeah, cool.
I will put links down below for the website, for social media, and for Steph's book over on Amazon as well. So if you're interested, folks, make sure you head there, give her a subscribe, a follow, a like, all the etc. Right, Steph, awesome. You look after yourself over there. And
I will, you too.
Bring on that campfire. Can't wait to meet up and have a beer again.
Can't wait. You can buy the first round.
Okay then, okay. Right, folks, hope you've enjoyed this one. It's been an absolute pleasure. What can I say? It's almost a year now that we've been doing these, isn't it? And I keep saying we'll get through this, but we will. It's on the horizon, I promise. Keep doing your thing, keep looking after those that you love, but most importantly, live your life. Woo-ha! Cool. Love that. Awesome. Really,
that was brilliant.
Really good to chat
I really
with you.
enjoyed that.